I see we're on YouTube. We're good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this, the 14th day of April, and our council meeting. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order at about 1:02 p.m. Notice that all council is present, as well as our senior staff. Also today, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on lands traditionally occupied by Indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples have cared for this territory for the benefit of future generations. It's their stewardship throughout the ages that we certainly recognize today and going forward. Also, I should note that this meeting is being live streamed, and by participating in this meeting, either by a delegation or coming online, you are agreeing to consent for that your image to be broadcast accordingly. We have not received any public comments through our email address on today's meeting, so I will continue on. We do not have a supplemental agenda either. So I think our agenda was long enough as we're moving through, but I will ask at this particular point if we have any declarations of pecuniary interest. Okay, Madam Clerk, I actually personally need to declare, and I'll ask the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Edwards, to jump in at appropriate times. Items 8S and 9. We've never had an S item, I don't believe, before. What do we do when we hit Z and we have too many of them in there? But item 8S and 9A5, they're the corresponding bylaw, and it is for business relationship reasons that I will declare a conflict. So I'll turn at that point the meeting over to Deputy Chair Roberts, or sorry, Edwards. I'm looking at Roberts. Sorry, Alan. And sorry, Gord. My mistake. So for those wondering, by the way, I did get my first AstraZeneca shot yesterday. Maybe this is a side effect that I'm seeing things wrong. I'm not exactly sure, but I do encourage all of council, if you have the opportunity, to try and get vaccinated. The sooner we can get vaccinated and that we can try and find that herd immunity, the better off I believe we will all be. We have an invited delegation at 2:30. That is not now. And I'm going to move ahead to approval of our consent agenda. And the first item being that of March 10th, 2021, I believe. We have a number of items there. And was there anything that needed to be pulled in particular, Council? Are we okay just to go right ahead? I think we're good. Okay, so I have a resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the Mayor and Council adopt and enact the following minutes and recommendations contained in the April 14th, 2021 consent agenda and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. We have a number of them. March 10th, 2021, General Finance Committee minutes, action items 1 and 2. March 10th, Council minutes. March 11th, Planning Committee minutes, action items 1 to 8. March 25th, special. Oh, I see a bunch of people waving. We have some questions here. Councillor Zavitz, you have a question? Cannot hear you, Councillor Zavitz.
Councillor Kelly was up first, sorry.
I have your hand up in the air first, but I will go to Councillor Kelly.
Oh,
yeah, I'm fumbling with the electronic hand, and I apologize. I'd like to pull action item number 7 from the Planning Committee meeting, March the 11th, 2021. It's 3 Water and Ice Limited. I'd like to pull that for a separate discussion.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. We can do that. Planning Committee minutes 1 to 6 and 8 we will adopt at this particular time in this resolution. And we will look at item 7 separately. Any other comments right now? Okay. I will suggest also, by the way, Council, that if in the future, if possible, before we get to Council, if there's an item we do want to pull, if you could let the clerk and or myself know ahead of time, just gives some time to prepare resolutions accordingly, so we're not having to amend on the fly. That's the March 11th Planning Committee minutes and action items 1 to 6 and 8. Also March 25th, Special Council minutes. March 29th, Special Planning Committee and Official Plan Review Working Committee minutes. April 1st, Special Planning Committee and Official Plan Working Committee minutes. April 6th, 2021, Special Planning Committee and Official Plan Review Working Committee minutes. A lot of committees. Any further comments or questions on that? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, I believe that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a request to look at item 7 separately. Do we want to, Councillor Kelly, do you want to have a conversation? Maybe we can get someone to put that on the board specifically or on the screen so we can all be aware of exactly what we're talking about. And I'll turn the, Councillor Zavitz has his microphone off. I'm not sure if you want to lead this discussion as the dynamic duo, or you're just going to follow through. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, this is the, for those of you who don't remember, the application for some sea containers on the Indian River in Port Carling. Subsequent to the planning committee meeting on, I believe it was the 11th of March, Director Pink forwarded some information, additional information to all on council, which quite frankly raised a couple of more questions for me. And I want to make absolutely certain we all understand this before we vote on it. Three things, and I'll keep them real simple. Number one, and it's specifically referenced not just in the planning report for this particular matter, but elsewhere. Our own planning official plan and our strategic plan, or more recently our strategic plan, emphasize preserving the small town character of our urban centers. It specifically identifies the fact that these particular units may not live up to the character that's expected for these reasons, for this particular location.
During the actual resolution.
Okay, and specifically calls out the fact that there's steel finish and flat roof lines. So I want to point out that these containers on their own kind of violate the understanding that we should have of the contents of our own official plan as it relates to the character of the urban center. And also in our just recently adopted strategic plan, we also look for preservation of small town character. The second issue really is the environmental impact. Everything that I've read and understand about sea containers, they have a wooden floor, and they're impregnated with the strongest pesticide known to man, because legitimately they're intended to kill on contact insects and vermin that might enter the can and be inadvertently shipped from one location to another. I'd like to ask Director Pink, and start with him at least, how do we have any assurances that that chemical, which I understand is also sprayed on the inside of the walls and which is designed to last the full 10 to 12 year lifespan of the container, there are ways to remediate that and to remove it, and they're very expensive. But how do we know when we're blessing a can that's being dropped there that it does not contain these pesticides or these insecticides? And I'm particularly concerned because the location where they're being placed is identified as part of the floodplain. I believe it was under a foot or two of water 2 years ago. And if that insecticide / pesticide is seeping into the water and carrying into the Indian River, then we're committing an atrocity by approving it to be there. The last question that I have, I've tried hard to understand the use of a sea can as the identity of it as a structure or building under the building code. And I really just have a couple of quick questions. If you look at the pictures that accompanied the planning write-up for this, there is already one there. There's already one can on site. I didn't pace it off, but I believe it's a 20-footer, and they're about 8 or 8.5 feet wide. So it's 160 to 175 square feet. It also appears to me to be hardwired. It's got power running into it through a mast. My question is, being over 100 feet, being characterized under the building code as a building, and it's clearly no longer in service as a means of conveyance for goods, and especially now that we see that it's wired, does it not, or should it not, or maybe it already does have a building permit to allow it to be there? And my last question on this same issue, a sea can is recognized as a building. I'm curious to know, when you take a sea can, a standard one, and you cut windows in the side and doors in the side and vents in the roof, the way certainly most people do when they're using them as for other than storage. And certainly I think that's what's happened with some of them up in Manette. Does each cut not need some sort of additional building permission to evaluate the structural integrity of the can before it's cut apart, and to regulate how and when these things get modified? So three real issues: the character of the town, the environmental issue, which I think is probably the biggest, and clearly I don't understand how or why these things would have been approved, especially the one that's there right now, which appears to me to have been there longer than 30 days, and appears to me also to be wired right into the electrical grid.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. I'm not sure, Mr. Pink, if you want to handle the first couple questions regarding character and the chemicals, or from a planning perspective, and I'm not sure if Mr. Snyder's on the phone or on line with us today, can possibly answer, or if you're going to handle the building code issues at the end of the day. David, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hello, Council. Good afternoon. What I can say, certainly in our staff reports for this and a similar application on Planning Committee and this tomorrow's agendas, we do note those official plan policies with respect to preserving character. And we certainly suggest to Planning Committee and Council that there are options for requiring changes to those developments if Council is concerned that the designs do not preserve the character of Bala and Port Carling. With respect to the environmental impact, I could not promise you, just like any construction material in the township could be contaminated with materials. If this is a concern to Council, what I can suggest off the top of my head is a condition imposed on the approval that it be confirmed that no pesticides or other contaminants be evident or present in that storage container. I suspect that hopefully will be a fulfillable condition and a reasonable condition imposed on the applicant and should address that concern, although I don't profess to be an expert in that field, but we can certainly impose that condition, and they would have to demonstrate to us that it has been met before a building permit is available. With respect to the structural questions, Mr. Snyder's not, I believe, on the meeting. I would have to consult with him to be certain, but I would suspect how the process works. Before those storage containers can be placed, they would need to obtain a building permit, and all those modifications would be reviewed. And I do not believe they would be then permitted future modifications unless perhaps additional building permits would be needed. I did not personally visit the property. I might put Mr. Sharp on the spot, or the planner that was involved. I'm not aware of an existing storage container on the site over the last, unless it was placed perhaps most recently. I very quickly just looked in our records. I see no record of a building permit being issued on that property, and staff can further investigate that if it's recently been placed. Hope that assists, but I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Okay, so Councillor Kelly, I'll try and keep it at questions right now with Council. The chemicals we can deal with, obviously, and part of a resolution going forward that would give us some security. Building permit, there's a question as was it placed with or without a building permit. Mr. Pink's going to have to provide some information going forward, or Mr. Snyder when we get there, but it did answer that. And from a character perspective, if I remember a conversation a month ago, we can talk about color and style or plantings if we want. From a character perspective, I'm getting the sense you may believe it's out of character, but a sea container in particular in downtown Port Carling. So I'll leave, unless you have another specific question follow-up, I'll go to Councillor Zavitz and then Shikawa for questions. Okay, Councillor Zavitz.
Sorry, and thank you, through you. I do have the same level of concern and more, one supposes. Having attended the site, a couple of things. Our strategic goal of this township council, create dynamic downtowns that highlight the natural environment and focus on year-round amenities, cultural attractions, and ancillary services. These CCANs at the Boatworks site are intended to be completely temporary, therefore the 4 years. I can say, having attended that site and the Manette site, and with some scrutiny, I would imagine that there isn't a building permit for any one of the 12 CCANs on SWS property right now and the 3 that are contemplated. I think that to give approval to this would be premature. I would ask this planning committee, council, to not defer, but to pause this today and tomorrow as it relates to sea containers, because I do think that finding ways to answer these questions right now, ad hoc, checked off this box, that box, there isn't a building permit here for one of these. I tell you what, in Manette, there are holes, there are windows, there are doors, there are ramps, there are roof structures. There isn't a permit on that. And I apologize. There isn't a permit on that structure, on that area. So we as a council right now are embracing the notion that we would allow 15 sea containers in a retail environment on Lake Rosso without a permit, without one building permit. There isn't any that here our planner actually sends a note after the fact, additional information, if I might, that says, so no permits have been issued. As the ownership of the lands has changed, proper authorization from the current owner is now required. So that's even a stickier wicket, isn't it? That in fact, somebody who we're negotiating with to completely add a resort to Manette, who will be probably ripping those things out, maybe not, but he's going to have to provide approval to us. So I don't know why we're going down this road of allowing, it's almost, I'm so worried about this for tomorrow as well, that we're setting a precedent, that we allow sea containers to be a construction method in our good township when we're spending our time on strategic plans trying to.
Councilor Zavitz, I'm going to just actually interject if I may. Is there a specific question of staff right now? As I want to try and keep us focused at questions, and then I appreciate your advance of comment, but is there a specific question right now that we have of staff?
Yes, thank you. And through you, my question is not to staff. My question is to this council. Would you please pause this decision today on these minutes and tomorrow's decision on that in development on Joseph Street, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ishikawa, did you have a question?
Thank you. Glenn had actually raised a couple of issues, and again, it would have been, my ask would have been to just pull this and not vote on it today. But I would also suggest that going forward, any of these reports, I would like a further report from our fire chief. And the reason is that in my research, and some of you know that I come from a family of firefighters, and it was very scary, the information that was brought forward to me with explosions that can happen in this, and in a couple of cases where firefighters were hurt quite severely. So I'm just asking again, similar to the other two speakers, that we remove this from being voted on today, and that it comes back to our planning council as a whole to discuss the other issues about CCANs.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to actually just put a question to Mr. Pink, because I think it's sort of been raised twice now. And I appreciate you did send an email, but maybe you could just highlight again for council the issue of building permits that I believe the applicant in Manette did apply for permits, did conform to what our building department wanted, but because of the pandemic, things were not issued at the time, or because of also an interim control bylaw that came into effect. And that there would have to be a new set of permits requested at this particular time. Do we know where that may be in discussions with the applicant going forward, or what's up? David?
Thank you, Your Worship. Your understanding is largely correct. The containers or the structures in Manette complied with the zoning bylaw, did not require site plan approval. The municipality, the building department at the time, pursued the property owner as they were placed without the issuance of a building permit. Building permit applications were submitted. However, at the time they were submitted, I believe it was coincidentally right at the time the interim control bylaw was passed, which prevented their issuance. about 2.5 years subsequent to that, when the interim control bylaw expired. We now have a different ownership, and my understanding is building staff are continuing to work with the applicant on submitting building permit applications for those containers in Minette.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bridgman, I see your hand is up. I'm not sure if you have a question or if you also might like this referred back to your planning committee. Barb?
Well, I'll answer the second one. I actually have a question first, because I am still unclear whether we can say these can't be building materials. My understanding is that we don't have anything in our toolbox to say that people cannot use these for building at the current time. I just need clarification on that.
Mr. Pink?
Can or can't, so.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. That is my understanding. Essentially, once they are no longer used for the transport of goods and services, they're not used for the purpose of a shipping container. In my mind, and from my understanding and what I've been advised, they're no different than any other piece of construction material. And therefore, we really have no ability to prevent their use for construction. However, through the site plan control process, as staff has identified in the report, you do have the ability to control the massing, the elevations, the appearance of those structures. And if you feel they're not in character with the community, you can require changes to that facade, or as Councillor Kelly pointed out, landscaping, other measures, etc. However, I do not believe you have any ability to control the actual material that is used. Essentially, put it another way, to perhaps help council wrap their head around it, a property owner can construct a building completely out of sheet metal to look identical to a shipping container, but not be a shipping container. This is no different. Once it no longer is a shipping container, it's no different than a 2x4 is my understanding. So I hope that helps clarify.
Okay, thank you.
So Mayor Harding, I would be happy to have this revert back to my committee if that's what this group would like to have happen.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Edwards at this time. Hasn't spoken yet.
Yes, thank you. And that's for the mayor. Is it my understanding from what has been said that a sea container has been put in Port Carling? Because we haven't given permission for that now. There hasn't been a building permit. It's premature and should be removed in that because, like I say, I think they're really going ahead with this, and you know, it sounds like council may have second thoughts on this. Thank you.
So I believe that Councillor Kelly and Zavitz have both confirmed that there is a sea container on the property at this particular time. I'll go to Councillor Jagowitz next.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for staff. My recollection of the planning meeting is that the question of whether these comply with the building code was raised and that there were no issues. I just like, maybe you could review that for me. Is a building permit required before the site plan approval, or is it after? And just what is the status of, I assume because these are over 108 square feet, they require a building permit, right? So could you just enlighten me as to the status of the building permits for the ones that are proposed, just the 3 that are proposed here? I'm not talking about Minette.
David.
Thank you. Through you. The proper order or process is compliance with the zoning bylaw, which they did obtain a minor variance for, I believe last year. Subsequent to that, they require site plan approval. That's what's currently before planning committee and currently council. And lastly, they must obtain a building permit. The presence of the storage container that we're talking about today, I believe that's the first I became aware of it, is just now that perhaps they placed a storage container on the property. Staff would have to investigate the presence of that, and if it's been placed and required a building permit or compliance with the zoning bylaw, we can pursue that to have it either removed or permit issued.
Okay. Do you have a supplemental, Councillor Jagowitz?
Yes, I do. Has it been determined that that these would meet the building code? Like, has That's my confusion. If these meet the building code and you can pass a building certificate, then that's one issue. So I'm just still confused because I thought even their chief building officer did address this somehow. So will these meet and receive a building permit if this site plan is approved?
David?
Thank you. Through you. I'm not a qualified building inspector, and I can't definitively say whether a permit will or can be issued. But from my understanding and in my previous dealings with building staff, I have no reason to believe that a permit will not be issued. I don't believe there are any building code issues. There has been a planning process that they have to go through. With respect to the property in front of us, it did require a minor variance and does require site plan approval. Again, I have no reason to believe that a permit would not be issued.
Okay. I see Councillor Kelly and Councillor Zabit's hands are back up. Before I go to you, it's going to be more along the lines of is it a new question, a new comment? What I'm getting a sense, so there's no question that I think we know that there's a shipping container there, probably out of sequence, which is not abnormal for this council. I'm not saying this is acceptable, but we've got a lot of trailers in a parking lot in Bala right now that were put there without permits and applications that have ended up in a certain direction. So I'm not condoning the action. I'm just, here's where we are. And trying to figure out a path forward. I've had suggestion from a couple of councillors to defer a decision on this. We can read it, we can either approve it or defeat it, or we can potentially refer this back to council next month, or we can refer this back to planning committee. I'm just trying to get a sense. I've heard a suggestion of referring this back to planning committee. Just a general perspective and nodding of heads, maybe if people are feeling that's appropriate to continue some discussion back at planning committee, or I'm getting no, I'm not getting that. So I'm going to go then to Councillor Zabit's first and see where we want to go, because that's not what I'm hearing. You're on mute.
No, I'm not. It's, I know this is a sticky one, but I do think, you know, the principles hold. Do we as a township have to embrace CCANs? Well, if we do, then I would suggest that we've done our due diligence. You referenced trailers in Bala. Well, that's a far cry from where we are here and now. This container that is sitting beside SWS in Port Carling has been there for a couple of years. I mean, so what I found interesting when I got into this was that there, in fact, the request should be for 4, not for 3. So that the one that's there now has been there for quite some time, and it got hydro in it. So that would require a permit. As I understand it, anything that is has any work done to it whatsoever, if it's not a storage container, no problem with a CCAN as a storage container. None of these in Manette, none of these 3 that are going to be proposed to be sitting in Port Carling are storage containers. They're habitable spaces, small businesses in there, which according to Director Pink, we don't even allow. Okay, it's not allowed. It's not allowed in Blue Mountain. It's not allowed here. So I'm not sure what is best. I mean, I would prefer this to go to the highest court in the land and us sit and talk about it, whether that's council or back to planning where, anyway, the decision was made once. It somehow got through Committee of Adjustment, somehow got through planning. And here we are. Thank goodness that Councillor Kelly pulled this thing out for a further discussion, because it is clearly warranted. I'm good either way. Thank you.
If I may, there's 2 things you just said. I'm going to go to Director Pink, because you talked about conformity to a zoning bylaw, that habitable space and the ability for these to be used as a retail space. Assuming we pass a site plan or whatever, maybe you can just provide some context that these would or would not be allowed to be used as a retail space, which is the contemplated concept. Mr. Pink.
Thank you. That is correct. The reason this development went through the Committee of Adjustment was predominantly for setbacks from the lake or the Indian River. In this case, the property does permit marina use. Marina use does allow accessory retail to be placed on the property. And again, the reason for the Committee of Adjustment application was purely and solely due to setbacks from the water. And with respect to the storage container on the site, again, I apologize, I'll have to do more research into that, we can certainly address that matter if it's been placed there for some time. If it's not shown on the site plan that was approved by Planning Committee last month, then staff can certainly pursue that it's not permitted under the site plan agreement, and no building permit is required or has been issued. We can require it to be removed.
Okay, Councillor Kelly, and then I'll go to Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, and through you, mine is kind of, I don't want to be picky about things. I want to go back at a challenge or raise an issue for Director Pink. When you characterize these things as building materials, that is different than my interpretation, having read the sections of the building code relating to these. They're not actually building materials, they're buildings. And so I can go to Home Depot and buy all the 2x4s in stock and throw them in my backyard, and they don't need any kind of building code approval until I start nailing them together. These things, once the wheels come off for the last time and they become other than a conveyance of goods, they're not building materials, they're buildings. And immediately they need to be dealt with as a building would need to be dealt with. It isn't the act of building anything, it's just actually the act of dropping it and changing its use from the conveyance of goods to any other use, whether it's storage over 100 square meters, residential or retail.
I don't think there was quite a question in there. I will go to Councillor Hayes and then Edwards, and then Bridgman. Sorry, Bob.
Thank you. Through you. In the attainable housing at the district, there was an actual presentation made by someone that actually takes these secants and builds houses out of them. We were informed that they do comply with the provincial building code. And I think if they're good for a residential unit, I don't see why they wouldn't be good for a temporary retail unit. I think there are certain conditions that have to be met, but I think that's up to the building department to decide what those are. This was brought forward, it was discussed, where the 3 units are shown to be placed on the picture is in front of that other one. So these are 3 new units. They are going to be blended in with the background, and there's going to be landscaping provided to make them have a softer appearance. And I believe it was one of the owners that said that they are going to do everything they can to make these upscale units because of the types of pop-up retailers they want to attract to go into them. And they are only temporary. They're good for 4 years, then they have to be removed. So I would be hesitant to throw this back to the planning committee, because that's going to take a month to go back to planning, then a month to go forward to council. So they're going to be past their summer season by the time that they get a decision on this. So I'd like to see a decision made today.
Thank you for that. Councillor, let's go to Councillor Bridgman. Had her hand up first, and then I'll go to you, Alan. Thanks.
Well, thank you. It didn't really matter, but I'm following here from Councillor Hayes. As far as I can see, these are allowed. They're buildings, they're allowed. Happy to take this back if that's what everybody wants, but I don't understand why. I think the only thing we can do here is dictate the facade, to Councillor Kelly's point. Natural materials, whatever, it has to be covered in Muskoka type materials. That would be my input to that. And it is, I mean, this one is only 4 years, but we need to come up with something on this. I would like to see, if it's a problem with this group, natural materials. But I also don't personally support taking this somewhere else at this point, because I think we had a fairly good discussion about it before. So
Okay,
that's
thank
my
you. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. I don't mind it going back to planning. I think we should be looking at it. I would just ask Mr. Pink, that is there a stop work order on this? Because if they've ordered other ones coming in, we don't want them coming in before everything is definitely approved. And they were, if they have, it's premature. And you know, the building code used to allow us to put spray asbestos in buildings until we found out it was causing cancer. And if what Councillor Kelly is saying about the insecticides and everything else like that, I think we should be investigating that. It could be a serious health problem. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I think one of the other things that we haven't discussed today was that a previous councils had suggested, and I'm not going to, I don't know that how hard we got on this, but in fact, we were trying to figure out a way how Port Carling wasn't going to be only open for 3 months of the year. So, and in fact, if those remember, it was Karen and I can't remember his name, sorry, White, the realtors that built on 118. And we had asked them when they came forward to build for 4 seasons, and that we were not interested in further buildings coming into Port Carling that would suggest again that Port Carling is closed after Labor Day. And that's what we're doing, is in approving these types of things. We're just saying Port Carling is just a temporary location. That, you know, if we're actually going to start getting some decisions made about year-round economy and year-round access to some of these buildings, then I think this is one of the times that we need to address that. So again, I doubt very much that these sea cans are going to be insulated. It will be 3 season. It'll be whatever it will be, but I just don't know that that is the direction that we should be looking at in Port Carling or in any town, quite frankly, because it's interesting. Bala is mostly open up until, I think the owners take a little bit of a break in January and February. But, you know, we still have, even during COVID, but I mean, we still have a vibrant town. We have restaurants open. To encourage this type of thing in Port Carling, again, we're just saying Port Carling is just a temporary location, which is kind of sad in my opinion.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Zavitz. I'll remind Council that I believe it was Mr. Newlands commented he wants to do a full development. This is a short-term measure till he can get a full site plan on a full year-round development. And it was his way of keeping some things moving along, is what he said to us last time. Councillor Zavitz.
Good, thank you. And through you, I wonder if I could ask a question of David Pink, actually 2 parts, Director Pink. So the first part would be, as I understand it, I think we all do, there are sea cans all over the place used as storage. There are storage units, they're allowed, they're permitted. If I'm building a new property, I'm allowed to put a storage container there and use it for the time that I'm allowed. I think they have a tendency to last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So that's part of it. Am I correct in the first part, which is that we allow storage containers, the sea can to be a storage container on a property, given that it's a 20-foot long unit? Can you answer me that before I ask a second part, please?
Mr. Pink.
Thank you. I'll try to clarify a few things, and maybe it won't be as brief an answer, but just to touch on a few, just back to Councillor Kelly's comments. I apologize. I was trying to sort of oversimplify so that it's clear for council. You're correct. It's not as simple as a 2x4. You do have to put the 2x4s together to be a building. But I think in response to Councillor Zavitz's questions and Councillor Kelly, again, once the shipping container is no longer used for shipping, it's not a shipping container anymore. That's the legal opinion that was forwarded to council previously. So yes, it's as simple as placing a building on the property. So yes, you can use it for storage, which a lot of people are doing, and there's nothing prohibiting that. There's also nothing prohibiting that material or that former shipping container from being used as a cottage or a retail store or an office space, etc. And I think to Councillor Nishikawa's question about the 3 season aspect, very clearly under the Planning Act Section 41 site plan control, you cannot control the manner and type of construction. So we cannot, through this process, say we don't want the skeleton or the frame of this to be sheet metal. We want it to be year-round construction. You would not be able to control that. So I just wanted to make that clear and hope it clarifies some of the discussion. Lastly, sorry, I knew I was reading one last thing. I think there's also some confusion about the 4-year time limit that's imposed on this. It has nothing to do because of the fact that they're shipping containers or that there's a mandatory temporary nature of them. There is quite a bit of history to this property. It is a listed heritage property. Several years ago, the owners of the property approached the municipality and the building had to be removed. It was in imminent danger of caving in due to snow load. And they pleaded with the township to not designate the property under the Heritage Act, but to allow the demolition. Council reached a compromise with the owner to impose site plan control on any redevelopment of the property. You probably recall in current OP discussions that only certain development is subject to site plan control. Council imposed any reconstruction on this property to be subject to site plan control. And the purpose of that was to preserve the heritage attributes and the character of anything that was going to be placed. I'm not, those who probably recall more about the property than I might, but the Boatworks building was well known, sort of a landmark to the Port Carling community. And council, by imposing that compromise, wanted to ensure through the site plan process that anything placed back on this property preserved that character. So just so happens that Mr. Newlands, my understanding, is only leasing the property, only has a temporary interest in it, and therefore has come forth with his Committee of Adjustment application, forthcomingly advising us that it is a temporary nature. Staff suggested, rather unorthodox, but we have through the process, Committee of Adjustment and site plan, continue to impose conditions to ensure that these units are in fact temporary, because I think everyone would agree that likely the proposal before you does not preserve the character of the existing historical building that used to be on the site. But the Heritage Committee and the Committee of Adjustment were comfortable with that, knowing that it would only be on the site for 4 years. I think it's less than 4 years now. So I hope that helps explain why the continuing condition for the temporary nature. It has nothing to do with the fact that because of the storage containers, other than the fact the prior heritage history of it. So I hope those answers help, and looking forward to question number 2.
Councillor Zavitz, question number 2.
Good. Thank you, and thank you, David, for that. I might just, it surprises me that it's a leased property when in fact the mayor just mentioned that over the 4 years he plans on building permanent structures there. So that I find that interesting. But what I find more interesting, David, if I might, is your communication to council of March 24th at 4:39, where you include 2 attachments and then your own preamble, your own explanation, if you will. And in there you refer to the town of Blue Mountains. I think you call it a worksheet. And in it says as a fact sheet from the town of Blue Mountains, which will, while subject to different zoning bylaws, contains similar standards as the township and notes the same requirements as currently being followed in the township. I presume you are referring to our township when you say the township, that's us, correct? Right. So given that, when they italicized on their fact sheet, it says no home business, no business whatsoever, no habitable space. People aren't supposed to live in those things in the township of Blue Mountains, yet we seem to not be acknowledging that aspect here and now. We're going to put 22-year-old people in there selling T-shirts for 6 months in heat and hot. So to Councillor Keller's earlier point, it seems like there's a disconnect. We're in a hurry to approve these when we aren't comfortable with them, or some of us aren't at all comfortable with them, in a variety of points, if you will. And I don't think this is about site plan and we just need to add a few flowers and these things will fly. Why do we, this isn't about economic development in the township. We have 15 containers potentially with no building permits, and we're going to allow that? I would never support that. And it seems like we're headed down that road. And tomorrow we're faced with another decision, which is even more prickly. So
well, let's deal with tomorrow, and let's deal with today, if we may. Thank you. I've got sort of 3 ways forward here, folks. And I'm going to try and get a sense. Number one, we can read this, we can accept it, we can deny it. That's our choice at council. I'm getting the sense from a few councillors that if we refer this back, no matter what we do, council is going to turn this down. That at no point in time do certain councillors want sea cans on the waterfront on Lake Rosso at this particular location. So I'm not sure whether we're just creating more work for ourselves. I'll let you park that in your mind to think for a brief moment. We have another option to refer this back to our planning committee for further information, for further discussion, or we could potentially refer this back to council. I just, as some high level, I think the reality, if we were to refer this back to planning committee, if we bring it back to planning committee in May, it would not come back to council till June. If I was Mr. Newlands looking for tenants for the summertime and was not going to get approval till the end of June, I'm certainly not going to have any tenants who are just waiting and maybe ready to staff and open up throughout the summer months. So I'm not sure that gets Mr. Newlands happy, and not that we need to make him happy or not. This is our council to decide what really wants to go on. But I'm just highlighting the effect if this went back to planning committee. I think personally, I would not recommend this goes back to planning committee. I think if anything, there's a delay to come to council next month to maybe have one more discussion. I'd also love to hear from our economic development committee, because I think at the end of the day, it talks about what goes on in Port Carling, and maybe that Mr. Newlands could have a conversation with them because of the nature of this. I don't know. So I see sort of two ways forward. Councillor Mazan, you have not spoken yet on the topic.
Thank you, and through you, and perhaps this is a question for you. If this was to be put off until the next month's council meeting, would we have further information by that point regarding the current container? So a little bit more background and history on how that's happened. Would we also be able to have some further clarification on the environmental piece that Councillor Kelly has brought forward? Because I do believe I heard the Director Prinks say that a condition could be applied if that's or imposed. So I'd just like a bit more information on that, because if it is in the floodplain and there is the environmental impact, I think that we as a council need to understand what that means. I'd also, I've heard a tremendous amount of discussion around the look and feel and character, and I would agree with those comments. And I think it might be interesting. If I recall last month, the pictures that we were shown were black containers. The conversation quickly went sideways. We were all over the place. And I think the last comment was, well, actually, we think we're going to stick with white because it was too hot. And my recollection is that whatever we sign off on a site plan is exactly what our staff are going to try and implement. So I think this is an opportunity, perhaps now that the applicant has heard a lot of these concerns, that they may want to consider coming back with revised drawings similar to what we've already seen on others that include a more natural form and function on the outside, the facade, that would be more in keeping with the character. Even though this is temporary in use, this is probably, has been very much highlighted, one of the key hubs of the township of Muskoka Lakes. So we should be feeling a lot of pride about what we put in place, not just because it's easy, not just because it's temporary, that's a choice, right? We should be feeling pride. And I think this has given an applicant, if I was sitting watching this, some really good information as to how they could do that in a way that's good. The last thing, and this is perhaps separate, and maybe it's a future conversation, I've really realized, I was the one who had kind of picked out that Township of Blue Mountain fact sheet, and I know that's just organization of information, but we rarely have an absence of a community design guideline. And I don't expect staff to come back next month with one of those, but what I'd like to understand is how we can get to a place for our two urban settings. And while I recognize that we can get, set some policies in our OP, I know we're going through our CIP process, but I think a lot of what we're feeling is the sense of character and how do we approve these things? We don't have any guidelines. So I'd like to see a mechanism on how we could get to that to help for future discussions as well. So there is a lot in what I just said.
Okay, so I appreciate that, and I agree. I see Councillor Jago's hand is up, but I'm going to just hold for a second, Frank, if I may, first of all, and try and move us forward on this. So I want to get a sense, we didn't at our planning committee last month refer it back to planning committee. We referred it to council. So we're here to deal with it at council at this particular time, but I'm getting an appetite that some may not want to deal with it. So I'm going to get a sort of a straw poll to see direction. And these are going to be sequential asks. So the first question would be, and I want to get a sense of council, do we want to refer this? And the first question is going to be back to council next month. Or the second question, if that fails, we would go to planning committee. And if that fails, we're going to read the resolution today. Those are the three options on the table. To Councillor Mazan's question, I think it's appropriate. We do not have the applicant here in the room to provide answers to these details, to get our building department to provide some more information. We need Mr. Snyder here to answer where we've got to, what's going on, so on and so forth, and how this may look. I think that Mr. Newland should certainly be watching these videos and then can answer accordingly. So I'm going to ask the questions, and I'm just going to ask for a show of hands. How many people on council would like to refer this for a 30-day pause back to council so that we can decide on this ahead of the season, potentially? We can turn it down next month, but how many would like to refer this back to council next month? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think everyone hold your hand up a second if I can, just so we can make sure in front of the camera. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6, 7. So there we go. Thank you very much, council. We are going to defer this right now. Yeah, it will come back in 30 days. Councillor Jaglitch, you have a question.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I wanted to support the option that was just taken, but I also wanted to indicate that I voted for this at the last meeting because it was temporary. I also support fully what Councillor Mazin has been said, and I think rather than just having it coming back, I think it should come back with certainly two things. One is that the safety issue has been looked into, and there's been some report on that. Number two, that the applicant has made some attempt to come forward with a better facade that would be more fitting and more appropriate. And once again, my decision to support this on those terms is because it's temporary in nature. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And as I say, I think the applicant, in watching the past two proceedings, will get a sense of what this council is looking for. And I appreciate that. Thank you. And we're going to continue to move on. We did have a notice of motion, but I do need 2/3 of council to approve this. There was a draft. I do not need 2/3 because it was already published on the agenda. Thank you. Look at that, my clerk on my right hand. We're good. So we have other items of business, item 7A, and that was a motion moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts, and that was a request for parking restrictions on Southwood Road. And there's a draft motion in our agenda package 97 to 98. Not sure, Councillor Nishikawa, if you want to speak to this first of all.
Thank you. At our last committee meeting, the committee that was formed to deal with the issues about Torrance Barrens, excuse me, I'm trying to think of what his correct title is, but the individual from MECP that we're working with, Wade Morant, when the parking came up and it was raised that the parking situation on 169 has been greatly improved with access to Hardy Lake Park, that in fact we can even do better at the Barrens. And that was actually somewhat applauded by Wade, by the ministry, because they are trying to tackle the issues that are going on there. And they, in fact, have had feet on the ground. Rangers have been out there taking care of things. Last year, apparently there were hundreds of fines issued for lots of things. We just don't get those reports back, but that's the type of message that they're trying to do. And also part of this is the fact that they're trying to orient the Torrance Barrens to an actual park designation as opposed to a conservation reserve, which also again gives them more tools in their tool belt, I guess. So if we do this, And I would also say that I have to talk to Mr. Becking, and I'm not sure if it's at this particular moment, or we have to correct some of where the no parking is going to be. But the intention is, so it's actually the northeast side. I was wrong with where I was looking for it. But anyhow, we think that this is going to be a great way to try to control things going on out there.
Okay, Councillor Roberts, did you want to chime in? Just, no, you're okay. So, Councillor Ishikawa, so again, this has come from Director Becking as to his recommendation for where we should and shouldn't park. Seems like this morning parking is on our agenda, this afternoon parking is on our agenda, and roads, and because this is a district road, so we are asking the road authority for no parking on these areas. You want to change where we're putting the no parking?
Yes, at the time when Director Becking was bringing this forward, I didn't have the ability to gather all that information. But in fact, you know, along with this as well as you can read, is the ability for those park rangers to do the policing end of it, the ticketing. That it's actually not our municipal bylaw officer, it's not the district municipal bylaw officer, it would actually be the MECP that will be doing that. So where that parking location, where the concerns were, after I checked in with the committee again, was more on the same side as where the original parking lot is, so that it prohibits, it allows people to load and unload where they do get a designated camping location, because that's what they're setting up right now as well. So all I'm saying is that some of that might be adjusted a little bit once it goes to district to get those exact measurements.
Okay, I guess I might go to Director Becking. I'm a little bit concerned. I mean, there's specifics in this recommendation that going to district as to where we want it. No parking. We did that on Highway 169, was supported on that road. But Director Becking, maybe you can comment on the changes here. And again, I guess I'm a little bit gun shy, as I've commented this morning in our meeting, that we pass no parking bylaws, that we move things forward and trying to undo. If it takes a pause for 30 days, maybe we should take a pause for 30 days. But Director Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship. My consideration of the matter would suggest that having it on having the no parking area on the south and west side would avoid people crossing the roadway. And given the curvilinear nature of the road, I'm concerned that it's possible that people would be surprised by seeing a pedestrian in the middle of the road. And hence the reason why I indicated the south and west side. If council wishes to revisit the matter, I would suggest that a pause is in order to give me an opportunity to go out and have a look at it and consider what's the alternate proposal. I just out of an abundance of caution, I don't want to create a situation that would ultimately put somebody in a difficult position. That's all.
Okay. So Councillor Nishikawa, Director Becking, I guess, is suggesting we do a brief pause because it's sort of the other side of the road, and just to make sure that we are addressing all concerned issues, because when this does go, we're not leaving the decision ultimately to district. We're making a request to the district to close certain parts.
Okay, just, you know, I would just go with Councillor Becking's report then and approve that one. Putting it off, in fact, it took, let's see, the signs at 169 took 6 months to happen. We don't have 6 months. And in fact, when we have this, to me, a great offer, a great ability for the ministry to take ownership and to actually police things that in the best way that they know, and they're the experts. I would hope that we're not going to delay this. I would ask council to accept the report as it is and move it forward and just get the process started.
I would support that, Councillor Nishikawa.
And I would also ask if, excuse me, if the clerk could send this to Gravenhurst, because we need them to also do the same resolution.
We can forward a copy of the resolution afterwards. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. Very quickly, I support that. Plus, I'm wondering, Mayor Harding, with your role with the district, can there anything be done to expedite the installation of the signs?
Well, it has to be approved by, because it has to be passage of a bylaw. So we will approve this today. It will go to our engineering and public works. It would be approved in all potential probably in May, and then be vetted in June at district council. It's difficult to short court that any faster, but so I'm going to read this resolution moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Whereas Torrance Barrens Conservation Reserve has experienced a dramatic increase in use during the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas the need for vehicle parking has exceeded the capacity of the existing on-site parking lot and overflow onto the adjoining District Muskoka Road 13 Southwood Road. And whereas the parking of vehicles on District Muskoka Road 13 has at times created dangerous conditions for both pedestrians and drivers. And whereas the Torrance Barrens Working Group at its meeting March 24th, 2021 considered the matter and believe that parking restrictions are necessary measure to protect the safety of the conservation reserve users. And whereas the Council of the Township of Muskoka Lakes Township of Muskoka Lakes, little typo, believes that is in the public interest that parking on District of Muskoka Road 13 Southwood Road in the southwest side of the road within the boundaries of the Conservation Reserve are prohibited. Now therefore be it resolved, the Township of Muskoka Lakes Council recommends to the District of Muskoka Council that a bylaw be passed to prohibit parking of vehicles on the southwest side of the District of Muskoka Road 13 Southwood Road within the boundaries of the Torrance Barrens Conservation Reserve. And we have a little more recital, excuse me. And further, give me a page 2. And further, that the District of Muskoka parking bylaw be amended to to delegate the authority of enforcement of the bylaw to include park wardens duly appointed by the province of Ontario in roads contiguous with provincial parks and conservation reserves within the District of Muskoka. Okay, you've all heard the resolution. Any comments? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Nishikawa and Councillor Roberts, for bringing that forward. Okay, that one's done. Director of Financial Services. Oh, Councillor Nishikawa has a question. Thank you very much. Ruth?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt during the vote, but there was a couple of other items that were attached to some asks as well that I thought we were going to bring this to general financing, so I didn't. But there's also a request for a couple of more garbage containers, and I'm not sure if I would bring that forward to you to take to district, Mr. Mayor, or as well as we are quietly being asked to not promote the Torrance Barrens any further. It is a big challenge out there, and us advertising or doing any promotion at all to that facility makes it that much more difficult for the province. So I'm just sharing that with everybody. Just kind of suggest people don't go there if you can have that option to do. Thanks.
So let me just come back to a conversation about additional garbage cans. I think that Director Becking, on behalf of municipality, can also send a quick letter to Commissioner Yon asking for some additional garbage cans. I don't think that needs to be a specific council resolution. That should be fine, just noted that way. And if you have any minutes of your meetings that supported that, he can include that in correspondence, and I'm happy to bring that up as well. But I don't think it really needs to be a council or committee decision to add a couple of garbage cans. So that will be done. And I do know that our communications group has regularly talked about right now, especially during a pandemic. There's really not a lot of promotion going on. We don't want to be doing a lot of social media saying, come to Muskoka, come walking, come hiking. Really taking a silent stand as best we can on all of these. There's still lots of information out there, and there's still people coming. But certainly nobody's in a let's go promote our parks at this particular time, because as you know, they are extremely busy at the best of times. So I think that's duly noted. So thank you for that. Director Donaldson, we have a report for financial services information. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council. So in our efforts of continuous improvement and as identified in our strategic plan, the report asks for permission to issue an RFP for a digital plan and information technology strategic plan. There is money in the capital budget to cover this off, although Council will recall that an application has been made for additional modernization funds, and we're still waiting to hear back on that application. This would be a plan that looks at a 5-year horizon in terms of what our position is today and what our needs are going forward and how we would manage our IT. And we would be planning to bring a report back for Council's consideration by the end of September. If there's any follow-up questions, happy to address.
Okay, I think we're good. I'm going to go ahead and read this resolution. Moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Jagowitz. Be it resolved that Township Council authorize staff to issue a request for proposal, RFP, for consulting services to create an information technology strategic plan. Any comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Moving right along, Mr. Moore, Corey, street banner program.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So today's report provides an overview of the Grants and Economic Development Advisory Committee's recommendation on a new street banner template. This project was included in the 2021 budget upon updating the policy late in 2020. Staff presented in a report to the committee in March various new design options for the template. We also got feedback from the local community groups participating in the banner program. Appendix 1 in the report shows the recommended new design template moving forward that I think was approved unanimously by everyone participating. Additionally, Appendix 2 of the report highlights the township themed banner designs. The images used in them are the images used currently on our existing banners, and the goal being obviously to use imagery on the banners themselves to highlight the township's brand, points of interest, and recreational activities that resonate with Muskoka Lakes. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to, Councillor Zavitz, before I could read the resolution. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, great report, Corey. Thank you. I just have some comments on the visuals as it relates to the banners themselves. Quite honestly, when I looked at these and I tried to be the most open of minds, there's a few that bother me a little bit. The one where essentially it's Kim Mitchell with his head cut off with the guitar for Bala. You know, Bala is so well known for so many other things than the key to Bala, if that's what we're saying. The other one is the Muskoka Lakes one right beside it, where we have somebody on a fly boots, where, you know, we're world renowned for our sunset. We don't have a picture of a sunset. And then I did hear some rumblings about Huckleberry Rock, where there must be better pictures of that. So not to be picayune, but I think there are some better images that we could use. Is that within our wheelhouse to consider?
Let me go back to Corey. Specifically, how did these get the images on the table creatively? And again, you said they were approved by the committee, but I'll let you talk about it.
The images were selected by staff just based on the township's brand and trying to reflect the area itself. If council wishes to have a few different images selected, we can certainly identify those and maybe send those out maybe afterwards, just for kind of another touch base and approval.
Councilor Mazan?
Thank you. Sorry, I was a bit quick on the mark there. I would support Councillor Zavitz's comments, I guess, that when we were looking at the banners at our ECDEV, I think we were looking more at the style and less necessarily at the pictures. And now that you've highlighted that these are the ones that are on there currently, and we've got a lot more content, there may be an opportunity, and I'm not sure what's the most efficient method to get approval for you, Corey, but I do think it would be wise just to have one more kind of refresh of these and the sign off now on the pictures and the content. So yeah, I'm looking at Huckleberry Rock, for example. I've got a few spectacular sunset shots to pick up on what Councillor Zavitt said from that space. It's probably one of the best spots to get. So I'm repeating at this point. So I don't know if it's coming back to Economic Development Committee and just having them approve it, or if it means coming back here. I'd leave that into staff's hand, but I support Councillor Zavitt's.
Corey, specifically, how would you want to go forward? I agree that we can add some additional banners, some additional images. We're generally approving the template look and feel, I think today is what council's doing. So maybe based on this comment, you could circle back with our committee and get a few additional images, because there's many of these banners that go up in different places. There's not just one. So if council's okay, we will let that work back and let committee do the final approval. Okay. There we go. Thank you. We have a resolution moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Mazan. Be resolved that the updated street banner template, in accordance with terms identified in staff report entitled Street Banner Template Redesign and dated April 14, 2021, be approved. Any further comments? All those in favor? That's carried. And just a specific note in the minutes that final images to be approved by committee. The Economic Development Committee. Yes, please. Okay, thank you. Okay, our next report is amendments to our accessible customer service bylaw. Anybody have any questions on that, or can I go ahead and read the resolution?
There's a business one, business survey results report.
Oh, oh, sorry, I missed one. Annual business survey results. Excuse me, Corey. Over to you. Any comments on that quickly?
Sure, yeah, if I may, Your Worship. The report, we brought it forward straight to council just because of some of the timelines associated with the initiatives identified in it. Unfortunately, since then, we've had some new provincial restrictions in place with the stay-at-home order that is going to impact those possible initiatives yet again. But I just wanted to provide an overview of the annual business survey results. I won't go through them entirely, but Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 highlight the results from that survey. Appendix 2 in particular highlighting the impacts from COVID-19 and the pandemic overall on our local economy. Just to highlight a little bit, the survey was completed by 77 local businesses. Generally, businesses in the township are happy doing business here, about 91%. I think what we can see from the results is that a lot of our businesses did some adapting this year, with 83% making improvements, whether that be digitally and becoming more available online, or improvements to their building or equipment they're using. Large amount of businesses, over 50%, are looking to expand in the next 1 to 3 years, which is nice and good to see. And additionally, the top 3 concerns we continue to hear are broadband, housing, and workforce, which we do identify in our economic development strategy as goal number 1. So we do have that. In particular to the pandemic and questions related to that, we can certainly see that certain sectors have been impacted more than others, particularly services, restaurants, retail, accommodations. About 35% of respondents still have staff laid off, and on average, just under $4,000 has been spent from businesses on PPE during the past year. So working with the Economic Development Committee, we reviewed our economic development strategy, and a lot of the initiatives we've identified in there are still relevant based on this data, and we'll continue to use this data moving forward to help with the actions identified in that strategy. Additionally, we wanted to look at our COVID specific initiatives. And similarly to the fall, when we planned for the winter activities, we wanted to look moving forward with spring and summer. And we identified some updated initiatives that we could be doing to help the local business community based on the survey results. We identified the Patio extension program, which was ratified by council today. We recommended having the twinkle lights, I guess, if you want to call them, that we put downtown up year round. We'll continue to help promote shop local campaigns. In particular, I know Explorer's Edge has another Cottage Country Spirit package starting up at the end of April that we will help share messaging in. And finally, we identified a possible new activity originally scheduled for May, but it would have to be pushed to the month of June now with the new restrictions. But it's a Hike the Lakes scavenger hunt type contest. The idea being to use our recreational assets, and those being our trails, to have residents be able to get outside in a COVID safe way, find the hidden sign, hidden QR code, be able to scan it, and enter a contest for a chance to win gift certificates to local businesses. So that was an initiative that we identified now for the month of June, just as a way to help support the local business economy, as well as, I think, mental and physical health of residents in Muskoka Lakes as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, any questions? Good news story all around. It's nice to see some of the satisfaction, I think, certainly. Resolution moved by Councillor Bridgman, second by Councillor Everidge. Be it resolved that the updated COVID-19 support initiatives, in accordance with the terms identified in the staff report entitled Annual Business Survey Results and dated April 14th, 2021, be approved. Any further comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, mentioned before that I got ahead of myself. Missed one, the accessible customer service. Resolution moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved, Township Council approve amendments to policy CGG 21, accessible customer service, as outlined in the staff report dated April 14th, 2021. Council, any comments, questions on that? All those in favor? There we go, that is carried. Thank you very much. We have our Parks, Recreation, Trails, Facilities Master Plan Steering Committee. It's been identified. There was a report provided, and I have a resolution. Any questions on that report right now? Okay, so I have a resolution moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved that Township Council appoint the following members to the Recreation, Parks, Trails, and Facilities Master Plan Steering Committee. Councillor Susan Mazan, Ward B, Committee Chair. Councillor Ruth Nishikawa, Ward A. Councillor Barb Bridgman, Ward C. Citizen Member Laurie Campbell. Citizen Member Maureen Miller. Citizen Member Peter Ringler. And Youth Citizen Member Tyler Stephen. Any further comments? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And to those on the committee and to the citizen members listening in, you have your work cut out for you. This is not going to be any easy task as we look at our facilities and I understand where it is we're going. A big job ahead of you guys. So thank you very much for stepping up and doing that. Let's try and do a few more. Glen Orchard Fuel System. Director Becking, do you want to make a quick comment about this before I read the resolution? There he is.
Sorry, Your Worship. With respect to the fuel system, I think this will lead to the most cost-effective solution, and so hence the recommendation. I know it's a little bit out of the norm, but I think it's a situation that warrants it.
Okay, Council, any questions or comments on this particular? Councillor Nishikawa, thank you. And then Councillor Zavitz. Ruth?
Thank you. Sometimes it takes me longer to find my hand than to, but just quickly, I had thought that Public Works had put the past director had put a fuel saving thing in place. And I guess I was just wondering if we were ever going to see those results, I guess. And again, we do things, but then I don't see that it has worked or not. And I'm assuming that it didn't work. But it's just interesting to find out why it didn't.
Director Becking, maybe you can explain I think it was the card lock system.
I suspected as much, Your Worship. No, the card lock system works very well, and the existing system will be incorporated into the new system, the new fuel dispensing system. The issue before you is that we have a very aged dispensing system, which consists of the tanks and the pumps themselves. The card lock system works exceedingly well. Allows us to manage our stock properly and make sure that we're not losing fuel, et cetera, et cetera. Allows us to monitor fuel usage by our vehicles. There's nothing wrong with it as far as I'm concerned. It's been a success.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, to Director Becking. Do we save just a ton of money by buying fuel in bulk and using our central storage scenario? I mean, is that, I know there's more than one reason, but is it a cost consideration, a considerable one?
Director Becking.
Your Worship, the short answer to the question is yes, without question. Many cents per liter difference between what we each pay at the pumps privately and what we can buy it for corporately.
All right, thank you.
I can't say what the exact number is. It varies according to the rack price, but I can tell you that it is substantially different.
Good, thank you.
So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that a sole source contract for the replacement of the Glen Orchard Public Works Yard fuel system be awarded to Muskoka Pro Tech, Inc. in the amount of $156,900 in accordance with sections 4B, 46A, I of Schedule B to Bylaw 2004-161 or Procurement Bylaw, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the contract. Any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Council, we've been at it for just about an hour and a half. We actually have a delegation regarding our Bala Falls Bridge at 2:30, which is oddly enough our next item on the agenda. Perfect timing, Mr. Becking. So I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break and we will come back at 2:35 and welcome our delegation in at that time from Tatham Engineering. 10 minutes. Okay, just missing Councillor Kelly and Mazan, I believe. We're going to welcome our delegation, Emma Wilkinson, into the room, but I'll get, oh, there she is. Welcome, Emma. We're going to get Director Becking to introduce this item first of all, and then we'll be able to turn it over to you. We have enough people. So Director Becking, I will turn the floor to yourself, and then you can introduce Emma. Ken?
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship and members of Council, as you, most of you are aware, the Bala Falls Bridge is a township bridge that is over the South Channel, emanating from Lake Muskoka and into the Moon River. The bridge is estimated at being something in the order of 100+ years old, and it has outlived its useful life. Council, we brought this to Council's attention last year, and Council approved the preparation of a class environmental assessment to explore alternatives for the bridge. Emma Wilkinson is one of the structural engineers from Tatham Engineering, and she's here today to brief Council on what has transpired to date, and to present to Council the range of alternatives, including a technically preferred alternative. The purpose in coming to you today is to get you to ratify a preferred alternative for the project, so that we can then move forward to the next step of the development of the project. So with that, I will turn it over to Emma and let you give your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma, and welcome to Township Muskoka Lakes. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Just give me a second and I will share my screen here. Oh.
We're just going to make sure either you can share, or we would, if you just say advance the slide, we can do that as well.
Okay, I don't have the option to share. So if you want, I will just tell you when I'm ready for the next slide. Perfect. Good afternoon. As Ken just mentioned, Tatham Engineering Limited, in conjunction with Mikowski Nielsen Associates Limited and Amit Consultants Limited, were retained by the Township to complete the environmental assessment study of the Bala Falls Road Bridge. As Ken mentioned, I'm Emma Wilkinson. I'm the project manager from Tatham Engineering, and today we're here to present the findings of the study and the technically preferred solution that has been identified. Next slide, please. In 2020, we were retained to complete the Class EA assessment. To date, the project has been conducted on the premise that it meets the requirements for a Schedule B Class EA project. A problem statement was developed and a notice of commencement was issued in July of 2020. Alternative solutions were then identified. Impact assessments were completed through the summer of 2020, and feedback was sought from review agencies and the community stakeholders through the fall. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, the community stakeholder engagement part of the process was delayed until November 2020 and utilized the Engage Muskoka Lakes website. The Township's Heritage and Sustainable Housing Committee was also consulted, with feedback provided in February of this year. Following the receipt of comments from the public and the various stakeholders, as well as considering the various studies undertaken, the alternative solutions were evaluated and a technically preferred solution has been identified. Next slide, please. The municipal class environmental assessment, or Class EA requirements, are dictated by the Class EA process, which is developed by the Municipal Engineers Association. In essence, it's a formalized and standardized process for completing municipal infrastructure projects, ensuring that the required steps are followed. This includes a number of opportunities for the public consultation and engagement. The study requirements or choice of schedule are based on the type of project, the potential impacts of the project, and the noted environments and overall construction value. In the case of the Bala Falls Road Bridge, We are following the requirements of the Schedule B Class EA, which I mentioned, which encompasses phases 1 and 2, as shown on this flow chart, as well as phase 5. This flow chart is a simplified version of the Class EA process, where showing phase 1 entails the identification of the problem or opportunity upon which the project is based. And then phase 2 is intended to identify and assess alternative solutions to addressing the problem or opportunity, including the identification of the recommended solution and ultimately the preferred. Phase 5, which would encompass the design and construction or the implementation of the study recommendations. Throughout the process, there are opportunities for the public input and engagement, starting at the project commencement, public open house or information centers, and in this case, the study, the online engagement. Upon notification of the project completion, there will be a further opportunity for the public and stakeholders to review the study documentation and provide final comment on the preferred solution. We are currently at the stage of selecting and confirming the preferred solution in phase 2 of the study, as you can see with the red highlighted section of the flowchart. Next slide, please. The study area encompasses Bala Road from the CP Rail Overpass Bridge to the north of our bridge, and then to Trinity All Saints Church, which is located at the south. The road is local rural road, providing access for local residential and commercial properties to Muskoka Road 169. Next slide, please. Over the past several years, the township has undertaken a number of initiatives relating to the management of the Bala Falls Road Bridge. The bridge was constructed circa 1930 and is approximately 90 years old. However, the foundations of the bridge are the remnants of the original dam constructed in the late 1800s or early 1900s. The bridge has reached the end of its service life and as such has been identified as being in need of replacement. It's currently load posted with a 5-ton restriction. And as part of the Township's bridge management program, the bridge is inspected every 2 years. In addition, in 2019, increased access was given to the substructure through coordination with the Ministry of Natural Resources to control the water levels. That 2019 detailed visual inspection identified the following conditions, which are shown in these photographs. The abutment in pure concrete is severely scaled, and there are areas of erosion between the base of the concrete and the top of the bedrock. There is localized cracking and spalling. The northern center span pier is eroded at the downstream end with loss of concrete for the full width of the pier. The southeast wing wall has severe scaling with exposed and corroded reinforcing steel. The southwest wing wall has erosion at the base of the wall between the concrete and the top of the bedrock. The approach guide rail is damaged and is substandard in installation height and the connection to the bridge barrier. The timber bridge barrier itself is substandard and weathered, and there are loose connections and damaged sections. The steel girders have moderate corrosion throughout, and the masonry sections of the abutments and piers are deteriorating. Next slide, please. As previously mentioned, the bridge is located on a local road. It has a rural cross-section with ditches on either side rather than curb. The existing bridge provides a crossing over the Muskoka River. This crossing is restricted to a maximum load posting of 5 tons. To the north of the bridge, through access is further restricted to vehicles with a height of less than 3 meters by the CP rail overpass. The bridge is 9.8 meters wide and has 2 lanes of traffic and a pedestrian sidewalk. It is located within a 20-meter wide municipal right-of-way. Although the bridge services on average only approximately 125 vehicle crossings a day, it's also popular for crossing for pedestrians, and it supports water and sewer utilities which cross the river. The bridge now has several elements with extensive deterioration, and in recent years, with the increased severity of rain events and rising water levels, there are concerns about the hydraulic capacity of the bridge. The piers within the watercourse impede flow from Lake Muskoka to Moon River during larger storm events. And during the 2019 flooding, the water levels exceeded the underside of the bridge. In consideration of the existing conditions, the problem statement was identified and defined as: the Township of Muskoka Lakes has initiated a municipal class environmental assessment to consider options and to identify a preferred solution to address the deficiencies of the Bala Falls Road Bridge as they relate to safety, structural condition, performance, asset management, hydraulic capacity, and design standards. Next slide, please. Upon establishing the problem statement, we moved into phase 2 of the process, which focused on the alternative solutions. Step 1 of this phase was to identify alternative solutions to the problem. Class EA guidelines define alternative solutions as feasible alternative ways of solving an identified problem or deficiency or addressing an opportunity from which a preferred solution is selected. Alternative solutions generally include the do-nothing alternative. For this project, 4 alternative solutions were identified. The do-nothing alternative maintains the existing conditions with no improvements. The capital costs would be negligible, but maintenance costs are expected to remain high. Proceeding with this alternative will result in closure of the bridge in 1 or 2 years. However, the bridge could remain open for pedestrians with replacement of the railings in order to meet current standards. Eventually, the bridge would still have to be closed to all users, which is expected to occur within 10 years. Removal of the bridge includes demolition of the foundations, which would not be replaced. The option would eliminate future operating and maintenance costs and improve the hydraulics. Because of poor sight lines at the south intersection of Muskoka Road 169, vehicles are prohibited from making left turns. The bridge provides small vehicles wishing to move southbound on Muskoka Road 169 access to the northern intersection with Muskoka Road 169, allowing them to safely make that left turn. With the bridge removed, this would no longer be possible and would necessitate the construction of traffic signals at the southern intersection. The water and sewer pressure mains currently supported on the bridge would also have to be relocated to Muskoka Road 169. Rehabilitating the existing bridge would primarily focus on repairs to the deck, railing, and patching of the piers and abutments, which would reduce some of the safety issues and extend the lifespan of the structure under vehicular use to approximately 10 years. The load capacity would not be improved. The 5-ton posting would remain. The existing substructure and superstructure would remain in use, and as such, no hydraulic improvement would be achieved. Replacing the bridge will provide the opportunity to upgrade the bridge to current standards, improve roadside safety, and eliminate the load posting. It also presents opportunities of different design options of single lane versus 2-lane cross sections, and the feasibility of the alternative solution depends in part on the nature and location of the transportation system. And the location of the problem being addressed, the comparative cost of the alternative solutions, and on the township's capacity to finance the extension of services. There's also opportunity within these options to explore whether a new bridge supports pedestrian, vehicular, and/or recreational vehicle traffic. However, all sub-options will permit the elimination of load posting improvements to the roadside safety and the opportunity to improve the hydraulic capacity. An initial pre-screening of the alternatives confirmed that do nothing will not fully address the problem statement. The other alternatives have the potential to resolve the problem statement. Next slide, please. Mikkelski Nielsen Associates completed a review of the natural environment conditions and provided input and mitigation requirements for the alternative solutions under consideration. The results of this review are summarized in the following existing conditions, potential impacts, and recommended mitigation measures. Bala Falls Road Bridge is located on the outlet of Lake Muskoka to the Moon River on a reach of the channel, which has been quite heavily modified in the past, not only through the construction of this bridge, but also through the construction of an upstream dam, a downstream rail bridge, and a further downstream bridge for Muskoka Road 169. The channel through this reach which drops several meters between Lake Muskoka and the down gradient Moon River, has been historically modified by blasting of the channel bed and through the introduction of retaining walls along its banks. These past efforts to create an efficient spillway for flows in combination with high seasonal flows that are being experienced have resulted in a very scoured and oftentimes high energy channel through the area of the Bala Falls Road Bridge. The bridge and the adjacent approaches do not contain any designated natural features such as the areas of natural and scientific interest, provincially significant wetlands, Muskoka natural heritage areas, or deer wintering areas, nor are there any such identified features in proximity of these lands. The channel through the bridge is steep, modified by past blasting and confinement with the retaining walls, and can be a very high energy environment. This immediate area therefore provides very little fish habitat benefits. The dam at the high end of this channel creates a physical barrier which prevents downstream movement of fish from the Lake Muskoka. While the high gradient nature of the channel through the area, which includes the bridge, minimizes the potential for the upstream passage of fish from downstream portions of the Moon River. The shallow blasted area of bedrock channel between the bridge and the upstream dam appears to have no potential for fish habitat under any conditions. Water quality in this reach of the Moon River is reflective of that in Lake Muskoka, a lake with generally very good water quality and low levels of plant nutrient phosphorus. Minor vegetation in the immediate vicinity of the bridge was noted. There are no rock barrens or wetlands features which would have particular value to the variety of species at risk in close proximity to the bridge or its approaches. The potential impacts of this project are the most significant one being the water quality and downstream fish habitat. From a water quality perspective, this results from material being introduced into the water course during construction, which can be mitigated. And from a fish habitat perspective, the primary concern relates to the habitat opportunities, including seasonal walleye spawning in the vicinity of the Muskoka Road 169 bridge downstream. The MNRF has confirmed that walleye spawning does occur at the base of the outlet from Lake Muskoka to the Moon River, below both north and south dams, with the primary area of spawning being below the north dam along the north shore, i.e. not immediately below the Bala Falls Road Bridge. All these minor impacts can be mitigated with reasonable construction practices. Therefore, the resulting recommendations are to obtain a Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, as well as Department of Fisheries and Oceans approvals for near water and in-water works, prevent debris from entering the water course and install downstream nets during construction, work in the dry where possible or during the warm water fisheries timing window, minimize any onshore work, and ensure sediment and erosion controls are in place prior to excavation and fill, and reduce your construction timeline. Next slide, please. The social environment was reviewed. This includes existing communities, residential areas, and recreational areas. Key considerations are the overall community impacts to residential property and access, community facilities and access, recreational facilities and access, pedestrians, cyclists, noise impacts, and air quality. Land use within the study area is primarily residential and commercial. There is alternative access across the river available via the Muskoka Road 169. However, as previously mentioned, access via Muskoka Road 169 has poor sightlines and restricted movements at the south intersection with Bala Falls Road. The overhead clearance is restricted by the railway bridge to the north. Therefore, Bala Falls Road is not a suitable detour route. There are two properties that are located between the Bala Falls Road Bridge and the CP Rail Overpass Bridge. These are the Bala Falls Dam parking lot and the adjacent parkland. Potential impacts to the social environment are property impacts, impacts to access the properties, and noise impacts during construction. Next slide, please.
Emma, as you work your way through here, just if I can, I see you're on slide number 10 of 19. Maybe just a little high level so we can kind of work through. I know we're going to have a lot of debate on this, and hopefully you can be on the line for some comments and questions, but don't want to short court anything, but just sort of some high level as we move our way forward, because there's going to be lots of discussion.
Okay. Okay, so for the archaeological environment, AMIC consultants completed their assessment of the study area, and they identified that there is no further archaeological assessment warranted. They did complete a few test pits, and they didn't find any archaeological resources. Next slide, please. As for the cultural heritage environment, AMIC did also complete their cultural heritage evaluation of the study area. They found that the bridge is located within the Bala Heritage Conservation District, and there is a bylaw associated with what can occur in terms of development in this area. The bridge is considered a local landmark along Lake Muskoka. It does meet the requirements of OREG 906 criteria for determining cultural heritage value, and a heritage impact assessment was deemed appropriate. The bridge was found to be built atop the remnants of the circa 1913 combined highway bridge and dam. You can see the masonry piers visible underneath the concrete work that's been done to protect the bases. Originally, that bridge was thought to be a concrete deck on steel girder bridge that was replaced with a Bailey bridge, and now it's back to a timber deck on steel girder bridge. So there are a few potential impacts to the cultural heritage environment, depending on which alternative gets chosen. And following the selection of the preferred alternative, a heritage impact assessment will be completed. And the Township Heritage Committee did review the public engagement presentation and passed the following resolution. Be it resolved that whereas the Bala Heritage Conservation District Plan identifies transportation as an important theme and heritage attribute of the district, now therefore it be resolved that the Heritage and Attainable Housing Committee recommend to Council that demolition without replacement of the Bala Falls Bridge is not supported, that opportunities be explored to retain the current vehicular usage or a new pedestrian only or trail usage of the bridge, and that any reconstruction or renovation include open railing systems that allow for views of the water and scenery, and that a heritage impact assessment be required as part of the environmental assessment process. And that a heritage permit in accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act be attained prior to demolition, removal, or external alteration of the Bala Falls Road Bridge. Next slide, please. The economic environment. So while we were reviewing all the alternatives, we did do a quick life cycle cost analysis to compare the different alternatives based on their capital cost and the anticipated maintenance costs over the remaining life of the structures. There's also user impacts to each of these alternatives, which are presented on this slide. The conclusion of this life cycle cost analysis was that superstructure replacement had the lowest life cycle cost. However, both replacement options, whether it be just the superstructure or the full replacement of the superstructure with the piers and abutments, are strongly influenced by the discount rate and the extent of the substructure repairs that are assumed. So both should be reviewed further during preliminary and detailed design. Next slide, please. Well, to save time, I do have a lot of bullet point notes of how we came up with this little graphical schedule here, but basically we went through a decision matrix of each of the environments and how they affected the different alternatives. For example, do nothing had the following noted impacts. The safety of the bridge will decrease over time. There will be no improvement to the load carrying capacity, no improvement to the roadside safety or to barrier protection across the bridge, and no extension of service life, which results in the eventual closure of the bridge. And because of that, it was found to have the greatest negative impact, as you can see by the fully completed red dot. And we did the same thing for each of these different, sorry, can we go back one slide? Yeah. So in summary, you can see alternative B had 3 out of the 6 with green circles, which had positive impacts, and alternative D, replacing the bridge, had the same, or had 4, sorry, out of 6. And this is the alternative that was selected as technically preferred. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of the public and stakeholder comments that were received. As you can see, the greatest number of comments were related to supporting the rehabilitation of the existing bridge, with additional comments indicating that if rehabilitation was not practical, replacement should be completed while maintaining the heritage value and current aesthetics of the existing bridge. There were additional comments related to pedestrian use, snowmobile use, access of traffic to local businesses, and safety at the intersection on Muskoka Road 169, among others. Next slide, please. So here we get into how we selected the preferred alternative. Alternative A was not considered suitable as it didn't address any of the problem statement. Existing deficiencies will persist and continue to worsen, and the bridge will eventually require closure. Alternative B, removal of the bridge, is acceptable alternative in terms of the problem statement, but the safety issues at the southern intersection with Muskoka Road 169 would need to be addressed, and there is significant impact to the heritage, value of the structure. It will also impact local businesses and make it less suitable than rehabilitation or replacement. Alternative C and D both address the problem statement with minimal impact to the social or natural environment. However, rehabilitation will require continued and more frequent costly maintenance for the township and its taxpayers as the structure continues to deteriorate. With the existing superstructure already being a replacement structure, the majority of that heritage value is associated with the existing substructure, piers and abutments, the local area, and the location of the bridge itself. Based on the reduced life cycle cost, replacement was found to be the technically preferred solution. Next slide, please. So moving into design, there are a few design options that can be considered. The first being replacing the bridge with a pedestrian and recreational vehicle bridge atop the existing substructure. This gives you the best opportunity to improve the hydraulics, as you'll get a much thinner cross section of a new bridge. It's also your lowest cost replacement alternative, but it does require intersection improvements to improve sightlines for left turning vehicles at that southern intersection. And you could use the existing structure for plus or minus 10 years under continued inspection with some capital improvements as a pedestrian structure. The next alternative would be a single lane, one-way road on the existing substructure. This has a preliminary benchmark cost of about 1.8 million. There is some opportunity with this option to improve hydraulics. The road would continue to be two-way on the southwest side of the bridge to accommodate delivery trucks. It would also be two-way north of the CP rail bridge. It wouldn't require signals or other methods to control traffic crossing the bridge, as it would only be one-way traffic, and you could eliminate the load restriction. Another option would be to go with a single lane but two-way road on the existing substructure. This has a preliminary benchmark cost of 1.95 million. Again, you'd have similar opportunities to improve the hydraulics, but you will require the installation of signals or other methods to control traffic crossing the bridge, as the sightlines aren't good enough just for a yield sign. You can also eliminate the load restriction under this option. Next slide, please. And then the other two design options would be to have a two-lane, two-way road on existing substructure. There's no opportunity to improve hydraulics through a shallower superstructure being installed. You won't require signals or other methods to control the traffic crossing the bridge. You can still eliminate the load restriction. However, this is your highest cost alternative other than replacing the substructure as well. And it's expected to exceed 2.6 million, which means you're going to have to bump up to a Schedule C Class EA, which involves a little bit more study and consultation. There is some opportunity to improve hydraulics during design if you're able to eliminate some of the piers, and this will be dependent a little bit on the bridge cross section that gets selected. If you retain the substructure, you are able to maintain some of the existing heritage features. However, it does require the most maintenance in the earliest years of replacement associated with the existing substructure. The final option would be to have a 2-lane, 2-way bridge on a new substructure. Preliminary benchmark costing being in the order of 3.75 million. There is opportunity to improve hydraulics if you can eliminate some of the piers. Again, this will be dependent on the cross section selected. You won't require signals or other methods to control traffic across the bridge. You can eliminate the load restriction, but it does remove your largest heritage feature of the bridge. Under this alternative, you would have the time for your first maintenance or rehabilitation for the piers will be a much longer time than if you were maintaining the existing piers. Again, this is going to exceed the limit for a Schedule B Class EA, and you'd have to bump up to a Schedule C. Next slide, please. So to summarize, our recommended design objectives for the technically preferred alternative would be to remove the existing piers and minimize any new pier installation, rehabilitate the existing abutments and retaining walls, install a single-lane, 1-way bridge with accommodation for pedestrians and snowmobiles, minimize the depth of superstructure as much as possible, use an open railing, use timber elements where possible, and provide accommodation for existing utilities. And then you'd have to document the existing heritage bridge and do the heritage impact assessment. In addition to this, maintain the 2-way traffic to all businesses on Bala Falls Road, whether it's south of the bridge or north of the CP rail overpass. Next slide, please. And this just summarizes the next steps to complete the project. So first is what we're doing here is adoption of the preferred solution by council. And then we can confirm which Class EA schedule is appropriate based on that preferred solution, finalize the project file report and issue a notice of completion. And then that goes up for a 30-day review period for public and stakeholders to comment. And then you'd have to engage an engineer to complete the preliminary and final design, ultimately obtain all of your approvals and tender the work for construction. So that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it, Emma. Thanks for doing what you could to speed up the presentation. Obviously, we're going to have lots of discussion, I'm sure, on this particular. I see Councillor Zavitz has his hand up and wants to jump right in.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Thank you, Emma. I'd probably offer up the emotionally preferred solution instead of the technical one. I do want to do something, and I certainly want to share that with my peers. I did notice one thing, and I couldn't help but notice, being so close to Bala and being so intimately involved with the Bala hydro plant, that there wasn't one mention of the Bala hydro plant in the presentation. And I guess the reason I bring this up is just because you talk about hydraulics, and the hydraulics have been dramatically altered, as you would know, since 2019 flows, where you indicate, in fact, 13, 16, and 19, where the flows were dramatic underneath that wonderful old 100-year-old bridge, will never be seen again. Because, of course, the fact is that the hydro plant now has that capacity, that 40-foot wide suck hole, if you will, that's can handle 100 cubic meters per second. So that is really helping out the stress on that bridge. So I think that that's an important piece for some of my peers here that aren't so Bala-centric. So I hear about hydraulics. I could care less what happens when the water goes over the bridge. I can tell you that the rapids, and not to be flippant, but the rapids are actually a highlight. They are a feature as they go down and through there. People sit at that park, stand at that park and watch and look over. So, you know, the hydraulic improvement, hydraulic piece to me is absolutely a non-starter. I would ask the question, what is the shelf life of your EA? Is this shelf life, do we have 18 months to enact this, or is this thing 3 months and then we have to do it all over again? Because I do have a proposal. So I just wonder, do we have 18 months to consider your suggestions, or is there a governmental restrictive time limit? If I might, before I would continue.
Thank you for that. Emma, what's the, when does the EA expire?
I believe you have 5 years before you would have to do an amendment.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you. So that,
Second question.
thank you, Mayor. And so I would appreciate if I might, then I'll be quiet and I'll sit back. Just from my perspective, I will not get elected next year if I vote for anything other than the rehabilitation of this bridge. I can say that I would prefer, as many phone calls have, the $1.3 million option. I would suggest what we do, though, is we have a community improvement plan in place and working, and it's going to take 2021 to enact. I would ask that the CIP plan for Bala includes this bridge, includes the rehabilitation of this bridge. It perhaps includes banners that we just saw minutes ago and lights on the stanchions, so that, you know, this is a walking place. This is a gathering place, and it has been for 100 years. And I want to reinforce that that social piece, if I might. Quite honestly, the 5-ton maximum limitation is a good thing. And I would hate to see that. Anybody that's got over 5 tons can't get underneath the train bridge anyway. So I've seen it, and they get stuck there. So, you know, that actually helps that main street in Bala, on Bala Falls Road. And it really isn't a true thoroughfare anyway. It is used. It's a convenience. It's a tourist scenario. It invites people coming through the center of Bala, by the hydro plant, underneath the rail bridge, over our bridge, into the rest of Bala, restaurants, etc. So the Bala pub. It's funny, I would comment too that we are going to contemplate later today a $1.3 million spend on the Milford Bay Bridge. For another $1.3 million, we can also rehabilitate the Bala Bridge. I am wholly in support of that. We don't have any closure. I wouldn't think. We wouldn't have some of the concerns with fish habitat and everything else. But I would strongly recommend that we weave this bridge rehabilitation into the Bala CIP. I think it's crucial. If we don't, then we've really missed that opportunity. So I thank you for that.
Point taken. Thank you. Councilor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I was getting a little bit concerned during the presentation about the reports from Mikowski, because certainly we have a lot of fisher persons that enjoy fishing in that area. And I don't like those types of reports to come forward and then us adopt them, because it doesn't reflect reality, in my opinion. So, and it was interesting because there was another report that rebutted that. But I mean, that has always been a crucial fishing area in my mind. I'm a little concerned about I think it was the second or last sheet that came up that basically said the recommendations, but it didn't actually have a price tag on that particular recommendations. Some of the language is a little bit different than what was in the 1.3 million, but I didn't have the opportunity to flash back and forth. So I'm not quite sure what that recommendation was, what that price tag was on that recommendation. Certainly the importance of that bridge and the historic values are greater than I would suggest we have discussed. We lost a lot of history when the district did improvements to the bridge. The design element became very industrial, took away a lot of interesting attributes that created the character of Bala. And if we just continue to do that, you know, we already have the impacts that happened with the construction of the power plant and things. And also, so again, it's much along the line. We heard that, well, where there's an opportunity, we might have some wood elements. Where there is, I would like to see what in fact we are actually designing, because that is a very key importance to me, and much like Councillor Zabit says, this has to be part of the strategic plan for the area. I'm not feeling challenged by the 1.3 number. That's not what my concerns are, but I certainly don't want to wipe out any more unique qualities that the area has. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councillor Jagowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I'd prepared a number of questions and comments, but before I do that, I have one question for the presenter or staff. After the presentation, I've become now more confused because the technically preferred alternative, as I understand it, is a brand new bridge, one-way, single lane, which yet all of the materials that are supplied to us give costs on anything but that. So possibly you could, following on to Ruth's comment, what is the price tag of the preferred alternative?
I'm not sure if Director Becking, you want to handle that, if that's the 3.5 million capital cost of full replacement. Ken?
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps I can assist you. At this point, the matter that is before you is very simply this. Tell us what you would prefer us to do. We've gone through and we've looked at the reasonable range of alternatives for the existing situation. I think there are several salient facts that I think you need to keep in mind. First of all, the bridge is done. It cannot continue to function in its current state. So there is work that needs to be done to it. Certainly we can try and rehabilitate it to a degree, but there are limits to which we can go. And those limits will result in a very short-term solution, which will ultimately end up having to be discarded. I think the second issue you've got here is the hydraulics. There is no question that the hydraulics of the existing bridge is such that it impedes the flows during the high flow times of the year. That is a concern because it could very easily and very quickly destabilize that bridge. Foundations are in poor condition, and as a consequence of that, anything that you do to the superstructure without doing anything of significance to the substructure basically means that you're putting a 100-year bridge on top of 10 years foundations. I think the third issue the council has to weigh very carefully is that you've got two pressure mains, one of which is a sanitary pressure main. If that bridge goes, so too will that pressure main. And we will have raw sewage going into the river. I'm not saying that it's imminent, but it is a possibility. And when that happens, it gets very, we have problems with the Ministry of the Environment, which not easily resolved. So again, I think there is an issue there that you need to keep in mind. Staff have indicated to you that replacement is the preferred alternative because it does give you the greatest potential to resolve the issues in the most cost-effective means possible. The reason to Councillor Jaglowicz's comment about the value or the cost of the alternative, we're looking to you to tell us what it is that you want. We've given you sort of ballpark numbers, but at the end of the day, we need council's direction with respect to what is the preferred, what is the bridge configuration. It's my hope that once you've identified what your preferred alternative is, then staff can go away. We can come back to you with some design alternatives that we can present to you that will, in other words, show you the picture of what it is that is being proposed, and you can weigh those alternatives. I think the other advantage to what is being proposed here is, in fact, that we can then have a far more detailed conversation about cost. Instead of telling you that the cost is going to be somewhere between 2 million and 3 million, we will be able to tell you with a greater degree of precision as to what are the actual costs that we anticipate. And then that will set us up for further discussions about all manner of things, not the least of which is how are we going to pay for it. So to that end, that's why we are where we are. I hope that is somehow helpful, Your Worship.
Okay, it does. I have a couple of comments myself, but I'll go to Councillor Jagowitz first. Supplemental.
Yeah, supplemental. Yeah, you didn't answer my question, but I appreciate the explanation. In your report, you've indicated a whole range of numbers, but nowhere do you indicate a range for the technically preferred alternative. So it was a simple question. Ballpark, what is the cost of the technically preferred alternative?
If I'm not mistaken, that's page 151 of the agenda package, 3.5 million capital cost.
Mr. Chair, that cost is for full replacement. And if you go to the page before, you'll see there's only one full replacement, and that's a 2-lane, 2-way road costing 3.75. This is a 1-lane, one-way road. So I don't see that the technically preferred alternative was even guessed at, but.
Ken, maybe you can advise.
Ms. Wilkinson, do you have those numbers at your disposal?
The 1-lane, one-way on existing substructure is the 1.8 million.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was for on the existing structure. The recommendation is a new structure. What does that cost?
I believe the recommendation isn't a new substructure. It's elimination of piers where possible and not to put in as many new piers if you put in new piers.
Oh, thank you. So the estimate is 1.8 million.
Yes, that's correct.
And that's, you're not building a 100-year structure on a 10-year substructure.
No, you'd have to do significant repairs to the substructure. I mean, you're going to have to maintain those piers every 10, 15 years as you go along. If you don't build new, they're going to continue to require maintenance.
So you aren't recommending a replacement of the complete bridge and substructure. That's what I'm getting at. Because it appeared you were. I'm confused. What is the preferred recommendation? Replacing the entire bridge
So,
Or-
Councillor Jagos, I'm just going to turn this back to Director Becking, and I think because there's some different numbers within our report, I think we're trying to understand it. There is a financial summary, as I mentioned, on page 151, and those numbers and such sort of made sense to me. I agree that that could be the higher upper range if we decided to do a smaller bridge. I'm trying to figure out how those relate to the numbers on the page 150, and maybe you can help us through that, because that's the question on the table right now.
Your worship, I don't have your page numbering, but under the heading of replacement in the staff report, you have single lane bridges, one way or two way, with a cost estimate of about 1.8 or 1.95, depending on whether it's one way or two way traffic. It does say that they're on existing substructures. We would include within that some modifications to the existing substructures in order to make them suitable. If we were to replace some or all of the existing foundations, you're going to easily add something in the order of $500,000 to $1 million on top of that figure.
Okay.
So again, it's at this stage of the game, we're trying to keep this at a high level in order to gauge council's wishes with respect to what is their preferred solution.
Okay. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I am confused by the numbers, so I'm going to go to what I would like to see. And in fact, some may have heard me make the suggestion before, but I was hoping that in fact, we could have a year of closing that particular, of just having pedestrian traffic. I thought this would be a good year to do that and actually get an understanding from the community how they feel about that over this sort of quiet time, if it'll be. It's interesting, a couple of times there was comments about certain trucks going under there and things, and in general, there's not a lot of trucks that use this facility. The one that I can think of that got stuck under there, those folks didn't really even know where Muskoka was. So it was a very interesting conversation from a delivery perspective. But mostly, again, I see that this could possibly be just a pedestrian walkway. We've been through lots of, or I've been in my travels through communities that have these types of things, and there could be different art installations, that sort of thing. I'm a little concerned about the comment that, and maybe I took it wrong, that we were trying to remove piers so that it didn't impede the water flow. I'm not sure that that is what our mandate is supposed to be, because in fact, that area is our only last scenic kind of water bit left. And so I don't understand that comment, but certainly I would like to see if we can venture through this year of having no vehicle traffic under that bridge and start getting comments from the public then. I think it would be an interesting exercise to do.
Okay, interesting comment. I'm going to go to Councillor Edwards first, and then I'll go to Councillor Zavitz for a second round.
Yes, I'm looking at page 150, and it's number 3. It says a single lane two-way road on existing structures 1.95. Then you have number 5, a 2-lane two-way road on new substructures at 3.75. What would a single lane two-way road be on new? And that, keeping it more to what it was basically a single lane road at that time, and that you could get something that would look with the area. I can't see spending almost $2 million on the existing structure. When they did the Rosso River Bridge and they started, they found out with the flooding it had underpinned everything, and it was closed for an extra year working on it. And that it doesn't make sense to put it on the existing substructure. and that, but it would be nice to keep it as close as it is to what it is now with all new. And we don't have a price on changing the pump sewage and the water mains and that through that area. So
Ken,
if you could answer that, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would estimate the cost of a single lane bridge on a new foundation to be somewhere in the order of $2.25 to $2.5 million. One of the options that if council is prepared to consider, let me back up. The heritage value of the existing structure is in the piers and foundations for the most part. One of the options that council may wish to consider is leaving the existing foundations in place, but spanning directly over top of them. So in other words, leave them as they are. And to be honest with you, I'm taking a leaf out of the book from Sir Christopher Wren, who's the architect of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Once upon a time, he was faced with a similar problem. People didn't believe that he could span the entire distance. So he put in the columns that everybody wanted, but he spanned over top of them. I think a similar approach could work in this particular instance. We could leave the existing foundations in place. Admittedly, they do impede the flow, but it will maintain the heritage character of the bridge. We span directly over top of it, so they're not required for support. And we can then try and look at keeping the cost of the alternative down by virtue of the fact of maintaining a single lane bridge. I think that probably would satisfy most people and will deal with the majority of the issues. If council were so inclined, we could go back and start to refine my verbal description with some reality in terms of, design work that will allow us to narrow in on the cost and so on and so forth. That's where I think we can go. And it will allow us to put in place a safe bridge that will last long into the next generation. So that would be where I think we can probably go with this. But if council wishes us to simply repair what's there, then that's what we will do.
Okay, so I'm going to just park that for a brief moment. I'm going to go to Councilor Mazan first, and then I have an idea.
Thank
I will
you.
talk to Councilor Zavitz. You've already commented a couple of times, but I'll come back to you.
I'm happy to have Councillor Zavitz go first.
I'd like Councilor Mazan to go first.
Okay. Thank you, and through you. That's an interesting idea. As I was looking at the report, and I'm sorry, I don't have the page numbers in front of me, but it was under the natural environment existing conditions. And as you were speaking, Director Becking, I was looking at the piers, the stone piers, because what I was seeking to understand was under the preferred technical recommendation, it's saying remove existing piers and minimize new pier installation. And so as I was listening to our Ward A members, I was going back to that picture and thinking to myself, having walked up and down that area, it is the piers in my mind that are very kind of iconic. So, I always defer to our Ward A constituents or council, but I do think that idea is an interesting one to explore. This is a heritage area. There's a lot of history here. And finding ways to do this in a way that protects some of that, I think it is warranted. I also just wanted to say, I thought it was interesting what Councillor Nishikawa brought up, maybe taking advantage of this, I think she called it the quieter time, to see if, what it would be like to make this a pedestrian space. for a season as we go through this process and get feedback from the community and see if that is a viable option. So those are just some 2 cents. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Zabitz.
Thank you, and through you. So a couple of things. First of all, we just asked the public what they thought, and 18 of 20, and that may not be a big sampling, but they already told us what they wanted. They want us to keep the bridge. They want us to rehabilitate the bridge. I would say this too, and again, this might have escaped a lot of us who weren't that close to the hydro plant, but the hydro plant, because of its mandate, does not run this spills 0 water through the South Channel, which is where this bridge is. So essentially from May, pick a date, May 12th until, I don't know, October 18th, there'll be no water going under that bridge at all. The cement that we're talking about degradation of, in fact, they'll only spill a minimal amount of water on every long weekend. So for aesthetics for the tourists. So that's a real thing. That is the reality. So this bridge, I think it's almost like we should be talking pre-2019 and where we are now. It's the dam that's taking the brunt of the water flow. This bridge has just got, I don't know, a 25% lease on life based on the months that there's no water flowing under it. And we're going to be fielding complaints in no time at all from people saying, the South Channel is closed. Why is that? Well, it's because the hydro plant's spilling the water through the middle channel, isn't it? That's their channel. The north is going to be closed as well. And I might say too, what's interesting about this is that this bridge is 100. How many 100-year-old bridges do we have with a waterfalls attached to it? Do we have in our township? In many townships any longer? So I almost wonder if this isn't an incredible opportunity to preserve and protect an area that we vowed we would environmentally. So that's where I'm going to stand. I'm done. Thank you.
Well, definitely taken. And I think the salient point is that our water flows through the South Channel have certainly changed with the addition of the water plant. So point taken. Councillor Hayes, and then I'm going to come back to an idea.
Okay. Knowing that if we do go with construction, the bridge is going to be completely closed off, I'm kind of in favor of Councillor Nishikawa's idea of running it as a pedestrian area for now, seeing what the result is, but then planning for the future. Now, if the pedestrian only works out, then all we've done is plan, so there's no money lost. If we were going to go ahead, I would go ahead with the spanning directly over the existing foundations. Don't touch them because they are important. They are historical. I agree that where are my notes here, that the foundation is important, but also the rails, the look of the bridge. If we do have to replace it in any way, let's let someone who hasn't seen it in a year look at it and say, oh, I didn't know that they did anything to it because it looks exactly like it did before. It's just safe now. And I would go with the 1 lane, 1 way, no problem at all. But I would like to try having it as a pedestrian only for a year to just see while we discuss what we're going to do with it.
Director Becking.
Your worship, if council wishes to close the bridge and look at that alternative, please recognize that you are going to have to put in some form of traffic control measure at the south entrance. So that is not without a cost.
So the issue, council, is that there's no left turn out of the south end of Bala Falls Road. So that's why people exit the north end. They'd have to turn right, and we're going to have a number. I personally actually had to do a U-turn through town myself. Thankfully, the Shield parking lot was open on Monday when I was in Bala, and I come across just to have an extra look at the bridge. So I think that might be a discussion potentially for another day as to how we temporarily close it or what we look at through that. But what I'm hearing a lot of, and I think Councillor Zabitz, to the rehab the bridge perspective, I think the general public, if I can characterize, and I think Councillor Hayes said it, they're looking at a steel structure. They're looking at the look and feel of the existing bridge, and they don't want to get rid of that and have a concrete jungle that looks like the Gardner Expressway downtown Toronto crossing over the bridge. So I think if I'm listening to a direction to Director Becking would be consideration of a single lane bridge, something like both directions, two directions, that has a walking component or snowmobile component in the wintertime that retains the heritage figures. Maybe it's a span bridge. We leave that to your direction going forward, but to look at something along those lines, but from a design heritage perspective, certainly would retain many of the current features of the existing bridge. And I like what Councillor Hayes said, that when someone comes back and looks at the bridge in the future, did they change it or just get a paint job? I think might be an interesting idea that if we could try to look at some of those design structures. Just sort of as a nodding of heads, is anybody in vehement opposition to that sort of direction towards Director Becking to do some further construction ideas? I get a thumbs up from Councillor Edwards, Councillor Jagowitz, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Zavitz. I'm shaking. I see Councillor Hayes. So we have a direction that way. I see something different in your mind, and I'm happy just to entertain that comment because I do want to look at the Bala specific Ward A councillors.
Oh, well, thank you. And all I can say is I'm telling you when I'm getting phone calls about, the people, I guess I'm reflecting what I feel. I think that they're, the test of what happens this summer. Who's going to do a survey? Who's going to stand around and say, oh, 62 cars didn't go through today? I think that, to make it a walking path, it's a bridge. It's an access route. You're talking about changing the whole thing. I won't support any of this. I'll support the position that I took, and I'll live and die by that. Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, appreciate that. Councillor Zavitz, I don't think anybody said that we're not going to have vehicles going across that bridge. The idea was, as opposed to, I think the structure right now might be 20 feet wide. It may go down to 18 feet wide. That wouldn't allow two vehicles to pass at the same time. But for all intents and purpose, it would be the same bridge is what I think the direction to Director Becking was going to be. Director Becking, is that your understanding that it's just as opposed to a 20-foot wide bridge, maybe it's 18 feet wide, which allows vehicles to maybe stop and wait for someone to go forward. And I'll be honest, if the public, those 18 people are upset with that, you can give them my personal phone number because of cost savings. I'm happy to take that. So Glenn, you want a further comment?
Thank you, Mayor. And the final word, you can't possibly do that at that restricted height train crossing at the CP crossing there. You can't ask people to wait. How were they going to wait out onto the highway? If there's traffic. So I would ask Director Becking how you would possibly manage that from a traffic perspective. It's impossible.
Well, I think from a design perspective and an MTO perspective, there are guidelines to that and to back up. So I think Director Becking would be providing us back with a recommendation what's allowed and not allowed. Director Becking.
Thank you, Your Worship. I really appreciate the input from council. I think I've got a good understanding of what the likes and dislikes are. Allow staff to go away and to explore details with respect to the design. I think what you've indicated to me, you may not have completely endorsed the concept of a replacement bridge, but you're open to consider it, subject to presentation of details of the design that are satisfactory to council. So give staff an opportunity to go away and have a look in greater detail, and we'll come back to you with something that we can further discuss.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. So my suggestion about the whole economic development perspective of closing to the vehicular traffic, and there was a lot more added to that, but could I request that be brought forward to, or I can just bring a resolution forward, but for those of you who have not been on council, and I'm going to look at Donelda because she's heard me say this years and years for years, we have an opportunity to make Bala Falls Road a happening place. And, we talked about it years ago of even possibly closing it off when The Bulls, for instance, had the 3 properties, businesses on that road that, you know, the option of being able to close the road on a Saturday afternoon and make it a walking area. There might be artists there. We might have buskers there. There's lots of great opportunity. There's not very many places in our township that we have that opportunity that is so, yeah, I know that a little bit of has happened in Port Carling a little bit, but you could only see that going on if you're down at the water, for instance, when we did something like that. So I really don't want to lose this opportunity to have a bigger discussion about this.
I agree. And
What I heard you, Mr. Mayor, say was that my idea wasn't going to go anywhere. So I won't speak any longer. That's okay.
Councilor Ishikawa, what I was going to recommend is that Director Becking, when he comes back with bridge alternatives, comes back with ideas as to how we could close the road and get some feedback from the public and what the cost implications for putting up signals would be, is my recommendation to Director Becking. So, Councilor Jaglowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do like the way this conversation is going, but I do want to just express what I was going to express earlier, and that is not relating to this project, but to projects like this in general. We have scheduled for later this year to look at all our capital projects and look at ways of financing them. And I think it's appropriate that we not spend amounts of money before we do that isn't absolutely necessary. And so all I would like from Director Becking is that if he's going to pursue this, would it be a nominal amount that would be spent in fiscal 2021 and not a full design package, so that we have an opportunity to look at it with all the other projects that are important. But I do like the way the conversation is going. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the one thing, this bridge has been on the docket for 2 terms of council now. And I appreciate as well the direction it's going. Director Becking, we have a resolution on the table. I'm going to suggest we don't read that at this particular time, but that just as a direction to staff that you come back with an alternative that would provide, based on this discussion, potentially the same look and feel of the current bridge. Maybe it's a single lane, maybe it's a dual lane, depending on the cost alternatives, and making sure that either can be done safely. But moving forward to make sure that we look at and evaluate the cost for long-term and short-term. Is that a fair? Do you have direction enough?
That is ample for staff's purposes at this time, Your Worship. Simply, just in response to the comments from Councillor Jaglowitz, no, going forward with a design at this point in time is premature. Until there's consistent direction from council, I wouldn't proceed with design to any significant degree at this time.
Okay, council, we have been 1 hour and 20 minutes on this one topic. I'm going to suggest we take a quick 5-minute bio break, and then we'll get into hopefully the rest of the meeting. So take 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, council, we'll get everybody back here and we're going to try and roll through a number of resolutions here. I appreciate the conversation on the Bala Falls Bridge, and Director Becking did just chime in the break that he certainly hears everyone's comments and hears the public's comments about look and feel, and would be able to provide us with some options. And we'll also try and provide some options for consideration for closing Bala Falls Road to evaluate that going forward, because Councillor Nishikawa is right that there is some unique economic development opportunities there with a unique potential closed-end road. So we're going to move on. I'm going to read just a few resolutions here as we go, and any questions then please chime in before I call the vote. But moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts, be it resolved that council award contract T 2021-4 to Curry Truck Center for the bid price of $265,998, taxes excluded, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Any comments or questions on that? All those in favor? I just bought a truck. Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Zavitz, seconded by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved, council award contract T 2021-06 to Gravette GM for the bid price of $66,750, tax excluded, and that the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Comments or questions on this resolution? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, here we are carried. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved, council award contract T 2021-07 to Gravette GM for the bid price of $38,450, tax excluded, and the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. Comments? Question? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, carried. A little bit more. Moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved, council award contract T 2021-11 for the replacement of the Milser Bay Bridge to MTM2 Contracting for the bid price of $1,156,773 plus HST, and that the existing contract with Tatham Engineering to provide contract administration, construction inspection, and material testing services for contract T 2021-11 be extended at the estimated price of $76,140 plus HST. And finally, the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the project. Milford Bay Bridge. Any comments? All those in favor? Okay, anyone opposed? We had a couple councillors that did not vote on that, but we did still call both questions, so it was carried. Madam Clerk, you okay? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mazan, second by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that item 1, granular A, Doherty Road of contract T 2021-13 be awarded to Hall Construction for the bid price of $221,414.30, taxes excluded, and that item 2, granular A, Beatrice Town Line Road, contract T 2021-13 be awarded to Hall Construction for the bid price of $38,631.60, tax excluded, and that items 3 and 4, granular A and B, type 2, Everly Road of contract T 2021-13 be awarded to 1501715 Ontario Inc., Allen Brown Trucking for the bid purchase price of $95,943.75, tax excluded, and that Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the award. Any comments on Everly Road? All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Another truck. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved, council award contract T 2021-15 to Gravette GM for the bid price of $56,250, tax excluded, and the Director of Public Works be authorized to execute the necessary documents to proceed with the purchase. All those in favor? Councillor Jagowitz has a question. Thank you. First of all, and then I'll call the vote.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a presentation. I noticed that the price is $56,000, trade in $14,000, net price $42,000. So why are we authorizing a purchase of 56K? Wouldn't it be a net price of 42? Or did I miss something?
Your worship, because of the shortage in supply and the delivery times, the supplier is not able to guarantee the trade-in value until the time of the deal, at which point we will either get him to take the trade-in if he offers up an appropriate amount of money, or we will auction the equipment off. On that basis, then we base the award on the bid prior to the deduction of the trade-in value.
Because his price for the trade-in was much higher than the other. So, but you still feel if you only get 8,000 for the vehicle, which is likely all you'll get, that's still a proper bid. You selected the best one. Thank you.
Okay.
That is correct, your worship.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried, Madam Clerk. Okay, moved by Councilor Mazan, second by Councilor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-50 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the corporate seal to an agreement between Township Muskoka Lakes and the District Municipality of Muskoka for permission to enter into a working easement to be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Comments? The question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, public docks and ramps, moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved bylaw 2021-52 to amend bylaw 2003-29 to regulate the use of public docks and ramps and establish user fees. Be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Comments or questions? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, carried. Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Jagowitz. Be it resolved that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the fire safety grant transfer payment agreement as attached in Appendix 4 to the report entitled Fire Safety Grant 2021, dated April 14, 2021. We heard about this last month. Any comments? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, rates of pay for the fire department, moved by Councillor Edwards, second by Councillor Hayes. Be it resolved bylaw 2021-58 to amend fire department bylaw 2016-125 rates of pay be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments? All those in favor? That too is carried. Look at this, we're just trucking along. I love it. Moved by Councillor Hayes, seconded by Councillor Jagowitz. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Bylaw 2021-141 to appoint a deputy chief building officer, official, and bylaw 2021-42 to appoint a property standards officer, deputy chief building official. Comments? All those in favor? That too is unanimously carried. Thank you very much. Our next point is regarding Lash Point, and I'm just going to turn over Councillor Edwards, maybe you can have the clerk read the resolution in front of you, but I will turn my microphone off.
Hey, so all your guys got a raise.
Okay.
Director Becking, your microphone is off. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Director Becking, your microphone is still, there we go. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And Councillor Edwards, I will turn this over to you regarding Lash Point.
Okay. So would you please read that? Would the clerk please read that motion then, please?
Sure.
So I'll read the following motion. Moved by Councillor Hayes and seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that portions of closed original road allowance lying between lots 30 and 31, concessions 11 and 12 Medora, Lash Point Association Corporation, Hemlock Court Holdings Corporation, and on the Ontario Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, rolls 41533, 35, 3501, and 3550 be declared a surplus. and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of the said properties pursuant to sections 8, 9, and 11 of the Municipal Act. And further, that Bylaw 2021-11 to stop up, close, and convey parts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 on Plan 35R 26-185 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
Are there any questions or comments?
Oh, can you put your mic on?
Any questions?
Okay, all those in favor?
I can't hear the council.
Councilor Edwards, sorry. My apologies, Councilor Edwards. Go ahead.
Sorry, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. A little bit awkward as we jump back and forth with Zoom, but appreciate everyone's help in that regard. Okay, moving on, we've got some more road allowances. Moved by Councilor Nishikawa, seconded by Councilor Roberts. Be it resolved that a portion of township road allowance lying in concession 5, lot 18, Majora Winch, Rule 41039 be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to sections 8, 9, 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and further that Bylaw 2021-18 to stop up, close, and convey Part 1 on Plan 35R 26236 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? That one's carried. Thank you very much. I don't know what's going on. I think we're there. Moved by Councilor Bridgman, seconded by Councilor Edwards. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time finally passed. Bylaw 2021-26 to stop up, close, and convey a portion of road allowance Hilliard et al. Rule 9-15-3201 and Bylaw 2021-54 to acquire land for an alternative road allowance in exchange for a portion of road reservation. Hilliard et al. Rule 9-15-32-1. Any comments? All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that's carried. Moved by Councilor Kelly, second by Councilor Mazan, be it resolved that a portion of original shore road allowance on the Severn River lying in front of concession 18, lot 29, Wood, Bryant, Mundy, Rule 817, 102, 103, and 104 be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to section 8, 9, 11 of the Municipal Act 2001, and further it's by law 2021-27 to stop up, close, and convey part 6 on 35R 26-382 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Moved by Councilor Roberts, seconded by Councilor Zavitz. Be it resolved that a portion of original road allowance lying between concessions 4 and 5, lot 20, Medora, Lang, Rule 41035 be declared as surplus land, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to section 8, 9, and 11 of Municipal Act 2001. Further, Bylaw 2021-28 to stop up, close, and convey Part 3 on Plan 35R 19-157 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? It's carried. Another shore road allowance. We're giving away a lot of shore road today. Moved by Councilor Zabit, seconded by Councilor Bridgman. Be it resolved that a portion of original shore road allowance on Skeleton Lake lying in front of concession 12, lot 4, Watt, Badida, Hildebrand, Roll 2-1870 be declared as surplus, and that the clerk is hereby instructed to dispose of said property pursuant to section 8, 9, 11 of Municipal Act 2001, and further that bylaw 2021-29 to stop up, close, and convey part 2 on 35R 26377 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. We've got a shared road agreement.
Okay, you can do that, yeah.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Mazan, seconded by Councilor Nishikawa. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-15 to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a shared road use agreement over a joint jurisdiction original road allowance line between lot 16 Medora, Township Muskoka Lakes, and lot 20 Humphrey, Township of Seguin, with Jeffrey Hunter, Hogarth, Rule 4-1966 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? 2 is carried. Thank you very much. Deeming bylaw. You okay with that? Moved by Councillor Jagowitz, seconded by Councillor Kelly. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-55 to deem lots 2 and 3, Plan M40 Medora, not to be lots on a plan of subdivision, Rowe and Jolly, Roll 6/2043, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? Thank you very much. That is carried. Okay, we're going into some site plan control. And we need to have a conversation about these, or we're just imposing site plan. We don't need any discussion on it. Mr. Pink or to Mr. Sharp. These are just conditions of consent for a little bit. So I'm just going to go roll with some of these site plan controls. If I'm in right now, I think the first one moved by Councillor Bridgman, second by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-56 to designate site plan control, part of lot 6, concession 3 wood, buoy, Roll 8/4/11, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That too is carried. Okay. Okay, so Mr. Pink or Mr. Sharp, I'm not sure who, we've got a couple of amendments to comprehensive zoning bylaws. Don't have a name on this first one, but it's 57720 Ontario Limited. Oh, Mr. Soya, welcome.
Good afternoon, Your
Quick
Worship.
overview
Thank
and
you.
reminder council what we approved last month. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you very much. In March, Planning Committee heard concurrent consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications to create one severed lot with frontage on D Bank Road and to change the zoning on a portion of the severed lot from a rural industrial zone to a rural residential zone, and also to provide exemptions to minimum lot frontage. Planning Committee recommended to Council that the severance application be approved. With regards to the zoning bylaw amendment, it was recommended that 2 readings of the amending bylaw be given and that 3rd reading be withheld until a record of site condition has been submitted. This is to satisfy provincial requirements related to the change in use under the Environmental Protection Act. No concerns were raised by the Township's Development Services Division or Public Works Department, and there have not been any submissions from members of the public. The District of Muskoka did recommend deferral pending the submission of a land use compatibility assessment and an aggregate assessment to address the proposed change in use. In this case, these concerns were addressed through correspondence with Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry staff, with Planning Committee agreeing in this case that such studies were not required. As mentioned earlier, Council is being asked to give bylaw 2020-130 first and second reading. I should also note that at the time that 3rd reading is given, a minor amendment will be required to restrict buildings and structures on the severed lot to the area fronting D Bank Road. This is for compatibility reasons. I have no further comments, but I'd be happy to assist Council with any questions. Thank you.
Okay, Council, I'm going to go to first and second reading right now, and that's moved by Councillor Roberts, second by Councillor Zavitz. Be it resolved bylaw 2020-130 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, 597720 Ontario Limited, Roll 2-2364, be read a first and second time. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. We do have a minor amendment and shall consist of, I just have a blank here. So the minor amendment would be, Mr. Pink, you want to chime in? I see your hand up. Or are you just waving at Mr. Soya? There you go.
Thank you, Your Worship. A little bit of both. I think Mr. Soya mentioned that the recommendation is to withhold 3rd reading pending the record of site condition. So I think we can wait on the minor amendment. There may be something coming out of that record of site condition that we may want to further amend. So I would just recommend withholding or leaving it at first and second reading for this time.
Not a problem. Madam Clerk, you're okay. I will leave second or 3rd reading and minor amendment to be held. Committee or council, we okay to do that following Director Pink's direction? Okay, thank you, Mr. Soya. Thank you very much. We're going to put a hold on those. Maybe a new date so I can strike those out. We have another I'm going to just go right to first and second reading, and then you can advise accordingly. Moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Jagowitz. Be it resolved, bylaw 2021-23 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14. Plask and Simmons, Roll 2, 582 be read a first and second time. We'll get to third reading and potential amendments. All those in favor of first and second? Madam Clerk, I think we're carried. Mr. Soya, any minor amendments on this particular application before third reading?
No, there would not be. No.
Okay. Council third reading, moved by Councillor Kelly, second by Councillor Mazan. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-123, Plask and Simmons be read a third time and finally passed. All those in favor? Carried. Do we need any impacts associated? Maybe Mr. Soya can help us refresh your memory, or Mr. Sharp, on that particular application, or you're coming on for the next application, as to public input or any decisions or changes we made. I don't think there was a lot of comment.
No, there was only one letter that was received since the planning committee meeting, and it was from the adjacent neighbor in support. That was really the only thing to add in that respect.
Okay, so I guess from a comment perspective, neighbors were in support.
Yeah, and it was just to permit a 240 square foot covered area addition on the second story of an existing boathouse, which has a legal non-complying side yard setback.
Right. Okay. I'm going to go read the next resolution first and second, moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-33 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2014-14, Moon Briquette, Roll 5 to 60 be read a first and second time. All those in favor? Madam Clerk, that's carried. Thank you. Mr. Sharp, welcome. Any minor amendments required on this one, or any background history you'd like to fill us in on before third reading?
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. There are no minor amendments required. This application has been submitted to recognize a subject property as a building lot. It has a deficient frontage. No concerns are raised by the district or circulated township departments. 3 letters of support were received from neighbors, and committee may recall that concerns were raised by 3 immediate neighbors. Those letters are attached to your agenda. I can go through the objections if you wish, but it's up to you with your direction. Thank you.
Committee, are we okay to give third reading to this? We have recommended from planning committee. So I'm going to go right to third reading, moved by Councillor Savitz, second by Councillor Bridgman. Be it resolved, bylaw 2021-33, Moon Briquette be read a third time and finally passed. All those in favor? There we go. Madam Clerk, that is carried. Thank you. Mr. Sharp, you're good from a comment perspective?
Yeah, we just need the effect of public and written submissions.
I think considered into the decision, but obviously it was a considered minor relatively to what they were looking for. So I think that's why council was in favor in the totality of the lot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think that might bring us to the end of our viewing pleasure, if I'm not mistaken. Oh. 8Y. Why? Oh, why? Okay. There we go. Mr. Pink, over to you. 8Y.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sorry to add yet another letter of the alphabet to your agenda. I will try to be brief, but I do have a difficult message to deliver on behalf of the Development Services Department. That's building, planning, and bylaw. We do pride ourselves on providing excellent customer service. We pride ourselves on that promptly. And in my opinion, at levels that I would wager larger urban centers with similar volumes of planning applications and development applications per capita do not provide. However, overwhelming demand has reached levels that are simply no longer sustainable. I provided 2 graphics to your agenda package to help illustrate that. They're on pages 216 and 200 to 218. You can see what they are both planning department activity and building department activity from January to March of 2019, 2020, and 2021. And you can see with respect to building, there's an over 17% increase in building permit numbers from those years to 2021, and an almost 81% increase in building permit fees. With respect to planning applications, there's an over 47% increase from 2019 numbers, and an over 116% increase for those 3 months from 2020 numbers. I would stress on top of that, it's not as if the planning and building department were in a downturn or at a slow pace in 2019 and 2020. Those were difficult years. I also note that please keep in mind that these stats are only for formal applications. General inquiries have also ballooned, and it's coupled with trying to cope with working during a pandemic, the struggles and inefficiencies of working remotely, coupled with several very large projects, as you're aware of, the official plan review, Minette official plan amendment, and as well, on top of all that, a large number of staff in both divisions, by my count, not including myself, 7 staff, which are new in their roles. With respect to the planning division, we just received a retirement notice several days ago. And once that position is replaced, 6 out of the 7 staff will be in new positions within the last year. That's a significant concern. Staff are working early mornings, they're working evenings, they're working weekends, and they cannot keep up. And it continuously is getting worse. They're feeling burnt out, and staff have left as a result. There were a few departures last year, and I'm worried this will continue to occur. On top of these significant concerns, I'm also very concerned about the potential for errors, which I'm beginning to see, and they're inevitable working in this type of working environment, and they're of no fault of staff. I can no longer sit by and continually just thank my staff and provide them with empty assurances that things will get better and to hold on. It has been like this since essentially the first lockdown lifted last spring, summer. So I am sure a number of you have received angry emails from constituents, in particular questioning that no one from the planning department has been returning their emails, that no one has been returning their calls, whether it's 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. And I apologize for that, but I'm advising that that is inevitable and that we need to take some additional steps. And in that regard, recommending that building staff will be reaching out to fill the seasonal contract position that was in the budget. It likely will be required for longer than the seasonal position that was budgeted for. A number of general inquiries have been submitted to building staff that they will no longer be able to respond to and will be directed to formal municipal record searches. With respect to the planning division, I feel that general inquiries just can no longer be continue to be responded to. There's just no ability for us to respond to them in a timely manner, and planning staff need to concentrate on those formal applications that have been submitted and the related pre-consultations and inquiries from neighbors and applicants as a result of those formal applications. Also recommend or suggest that a consultant be retained to assist. You can see on the statistics for the planning department, rather notable increase in the number of site plan applications. And I think a consultant may be needed to work through that volume. So I did want to raise these issues with council so they're clear and aware. You may receive complaints that that level of service has been provided for many years. And again, we pride ourselves on providing that. But unfortunately, I just feel it's no longer sustainable for the health of my teams and also to reduce errors by the municipality. I fully intend, obviously, communication is a very important part of this. Our emails, voicemails, and websites will be populated with auto replies, and that service will no longer be able to be provided. I certainly hope it is a short-term matter. However, all indications seem to be pointing that this may be quite a bit of while that we see this amount of development activity in the township. I'm not sure if this is a temporary situation, but I'm certainly unable to predict that at this time. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Appreciate it. And also I will say publicly that I appreciate the extreme hours and dedication that our planning department and our building department have gone through. The stats, the data themselves, you look at it, are just insane. And the world is building and expanding their properties. It's that simple. So I have a couple comments or questions from council. Council Zavitz, Bridgman, then Roberts.
Thank you. And through you, David, thanks so much, of course, for this report. The candidness, the reality, the obvious angst you're feeling, and as you're feeling you're letting someone down. I don't believe you are letting anyone down. And I think we might want to look at, the service level expectation, a couple of points. First of all, where is the district in this? Can the district help us? Here we are talking this morning about a service level review. Can we second, as they do, our people, can we second their people to give us an assist? In terms of it being a business guy, I mean, it's kind of like a business opportunity, is it not? I mean, there's so much opportunity in front of us, we can't handle it all. And, to going outside, and if we need to look at some kind of a special ruling where we go out and procure 3 90-day contract people or 120-day contract people to help in that department. I know it's not a great solution, but we either have to protract the service delivery or deal with it by amping up. Is it that simple a business equation? Thank you.
Mr. King.
Thank you, through your worship. Certainly that's been done in the past, and the district, we have other area municipalities have requested assistance. I think in our township in the planning department, that's happened once in the past, I do recall. However, I think what your worship, you mentioned, it's not an isolated Muskoka Lakes problem. It seems like it's happening in many other municipalities. A lot of smaller urban centers within a reasonable distance of the GTA are seeing an extreme level of development and planning activity. It does always seem to be heightened here. We've always had higher per capita numbers to begin with, so it seems a bit hypersensitive here. But I suspect if I did reach out to the district, I can't speak on their behalf, but I'm fairly confident they would tell me they're feeling very overwhelmed and can't sacrifice any positions at the current time if I were to ask. But I'm certainly happy to if that's the direction. I know I've put a lot of thought into the options and solutions. And as with anything, there's pros and cons. And certainly sometimes bringing in contract positions or temporary positions, consultants, sometimes bringing them up to speed on our processes, our official plan, our zoning bylaw creates more work on existing staff than the benefits they actually provide. And that's why I was left with the service level option that simply we will have an auto reply that general inquiries will simply not be able to be responded to. I'd like to think a consultant could at least assist us with, on a temporary basis, with the site plan sort of volumes that we've experienced, as those are a little more straightforward and don't involve report writing and presentations to council, and that may hopefully assist us in that regard. Thankfully, if there is one silver lining, I think we'll certainly have a surplus in our budget this year with planning and building permit fees, and that should assist with compensating for any additional consulting help or, as I said, the seasonal position in the building department that may be required a little bit longer.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Mayor Harding. David, thank you. And I echo Councillor Zavitz. It can't be easy bringing this report forward. I want to share something with you, and I asked Bryce if I could, because I knew there was a lot of angst going on in the department. So when I spoke to him Tuesday, I said, I don't even want to ask you, but what time did you get into the office this morning? And he said, honestly, Barb, I got up at 4. I am so tired. I went back to bed. That is the normal routine. So that's one thing. I just want to make sure that everybody understands the hours that are being worked here. The second thing, David, that you didn't mention, and I hope you don't mind if I do, that new planning position has not been filled yet because my understanding is it's very difficult to get qualified people to apply for it. So I think we're at a point where we can say we're going to spend the money, but where do we find the bodies? And so I think I agree with you. It's imperative we have to change the service level. And I'm just hoping that your suggestion of being able to do some of the site plans and whatever, you can find the consultants or the contract work to actually do that. So I'm in complete support of this. We just need to, and I think of Councillor Mazam, we just need to make sure this is communicated out. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, as we go through and ask questions along the way, we need to be careful with that we don't name specific staff members along the way. We can talk about the planning department in general, but as soon as we start to identify specific staff, hours of work or whatever, we cross over to what should be potentially closed session items. So I'll just remind staff that going forward.
Sorry about that. I did ask, but I should have known better, right? Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I've seen this pattern before in my years of experience and with a large corporation. And I suggest that we need a different set of eyes because staff is so busy, they really can't stay on top of it. And a company like KPMG or someone to come in and say, how can we re-engineer the process so we can speed it up? And that's just food for thought for Director CAO Hammond. It's just that we couldn't put this on the back of staff because they're so busy, but we just maybe need a different set of eyes on what maybe we could do or not do and moving faster. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Edwards.
Yes, thank you. And through to David, I support you 100%. I've seen everything coming up on the committee of adjustment side of it. I'm just wondering if until we get a full-time planner in there, because that's what we need, and that to beef our staff up because it's not slowing up. But we have had consultants on a contract basis that seem to help. They seem to be aware of what's going on. They've been excellent service. I would say we should get them because the fees that are paid for all these services, it sort of carries itself. So I think we could increase it. And if we have to at this point, lower our level of service temporarily, I'm in full support of that and that because you know how to handle it. And I would just leave it with you, but we have to do something for you. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kelly.
Sorry, can't see. Yeah, I'm not muted. Thank you very much through you. David, you know, it takes a real leader to admit something like this and to try to own it and try to fix it. And I applaud you for that. I'm also going to suggest that without trying to burden you, that maybe we take advantage of a small, loosely organized communications team that deals with stuff as needed. And we maybe put together a communication that goes beyond this group into the constituents, into the real estate community, the building supply community, the planning services community. And trust me, absolutely will not let it go out if it sounds in any way apologetic. You have nothing to apologize for. If you ask anybody in any of those communities, everyone is caught off guard by the volume of traffic, and we're caught off guard by it too. But I do think we need to make sure that we set expectations. If we're not living up to old expectations, we just got to draw a line somewhere and say it won't be like that for a while. And in the meantime, here's how we're going to serve you, and here's what you can expect. Certainly, I think I forget who's that, Susan, Councillor Mazan, the mayor, Corey Moore, a few of us should just get together and put some stuff in front of you. And when we hit the right number, we'll get it out into the hands of people that hopefully can understand that this problem is being brought to us. We're responding to the best of our ability. In the meantime, there will be a different sort of set of criteria by which we measure our turnaround and our performance.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes, then Mazan.
Thank you, through you. I agree, David, you have to save your staff's sanity, and working those hours is not good for anyone. So I would support you with bringing on a contract person to look at whatever you feel would best suit your needs. I would also make the suggestion that you look on hiring someone for at least a 4 to 5 month contract as a help desk for the front end to field all of the calls, to let your people actually focus on one thing at a time rather than trying to multitask, because that's, with the number of incidents and calls that are coming in, compound that with the amount of work you're trying to do, and you're just going to be spinning your wheels, and it's just going to get more frustrating. So I would think backfill and front load as well.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Mazan.
Thank you, and through you. Yeah, I would happily offer up the support of your communications team to help navigate or massage the message. And it is about setting expectations. So part of setting expectations is also understanding, like I've been listening to the comment about general inquiries, and that's such a broad range, right? And understanding the time spent on each of these types of things. And I was trying to think as I was listening to everybody else, and then Councillor Hayes just popped up with an idea. Is part of this, you know, having almost like a call center feeling, just have somebody fielding these calls and actually capturing it. And not that we're doing anything with it necessarily today, but with the lens of how do you do this managing moving forward? Because there is ways to leverage technology, you hire different people, you set expectations moving forward. So anyways, those are just thoughts I had, but the larger thought, and again, I'm just echoing what everybody else said, you don't have to apologize for leading your team. Everybody's exhausted, and this has been a grind. So numbers speak something, but so do people. So it's our job to support you. If you think this is the right decision, I support that 100%, and I will happily support in behind the scenes and helping craft a message out. So.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Zavitz.
Oh, thank you, and through you, not so much to David, I suppose, to the CAO. So Derek, you know, COVID, I mean, Christ, turn the newspaper, it's everywhere. It's COVID. It's been here for over a year. We did talk about how 2021 was going to be a mirror image of 2020. You know, I think our planning and building department is feeling the effects of everybody, you know, coming to Muskoka. I mean, I think that perhaps the township, talk about communication, I think the township needs to take a role in setting an expectation, creating an environment where there is some understanding that when you know, I do think, we've got to man the phones. We've got to have a personal voice at the other end when they want to build. We can capture that information. Thank you for your inquiry. We have to be interfacing with people. It can't be a 1-800 number. Sorry, call back. We'll just frustrate everyone. Let's capture the information. Let's communicate to the public that let's lead with this. There is a crush of new construction in our township, creating this incredible environment, you know, economic development, whatever. Point being is that, you know, we're having a heck of a time handling it, and then set that expectation with, you know, for the next 90 days, for the next 120 days, pick some numbers, some things that David and your group think you can manage, and, you know, buy ourselves that time, set everybody back. You know what, let the developers complain, let them call, they'll be calling the mayor. This is ridiculous, this is absurd. Well, it isn't, it's COVID, isn't it? I mean, so much of this is experiential, we're living it. And I would really take a strong stance, a business position that we as a corporation, we're not in trouble. we're handling mammoth quantities of work. And people need to understand that. And we'll get to you as quickly as we can. Leave your message, tell us what you need, and we'll get back to you. Then at least we can get the scope of the work and then perhaps take a longer strategy. Thank you.
Okay, I'm actually going to handle that one, Councillor Zavis. I know you requested CEO Hammond and Director Pink, I know, is watching. What we just heard from Director Pink is we cannot answer those general inquiries. It's nice to say, leave a message, we'll get back to you. Here's the general idea. But the nature of phone calls and the type they come in, it's not an administrative function. It really requires an in-depth understanding of our zoning bylaws, our official plan, to provide guidance, if you will, to people inquiring. And a lot of the property and a lot of the inquiries I know are from real estate agents, from people. Give you an example right now. When someone's trying to buy a property, someone puts something on the market, everybody wants to know what can we build there and what can happen. So it goes on, there's multiple offers, there's 10 people looking at the property. That's 10 phone calls coming in as to how can I do something, what can I do? And I think what Mr. Pink is saying is he no longer can offer this service. If somebody wants to know what's going to happen on a property, there are, and there will be references, I believe, on our website, and the communications team can chime in on this, to call a planscape, call one of the other consultants, other people who are very well versed in our bylaws, and they can provide information of the general nature, and they would have to pay for that at that particular time. But at this particular point, and the other thing I want to say, this is not exclusive to our planning department. This is every single department within the township of Muskoka Lakes. How many road shore allowances did we go through today that have been vetted through our clerk's department? Every time a planning application comes in, what's the fire department have to say about it? What's the roads department have to say about it? Can we add a road? Is it safe? Is it not? Anything that comes in, for the most part, touches everybody. We have more people living up here right now. They want to look at their property. They're talking to our director of finance. A lot more engagement is currently going on with our public, that every single staff member is working beyond overtime. And Councillor Zavich, you're right, this is a COVID thing. It hit last year, but as we put on the table an official plan review, we're going to watch if it's already 2x, it's going to go to 4x in the amount of work that's coming our way in trying to deal with this. And that's really going to be the issue, because then those are going to be real applications of somebody who says, I've got a 400-foot lot and I want 2 lots for my kids going forward because you're going to go to 300. So I want my 2 lots, and that's going to take planning staff time and energy. So we're not going to answer this today. I think what I appreciate, and I know CEO Hammond, Director Pink, and every department head has been struggling with, is managing customer expectations. We as council, we set the tone, we set the direction. We are the ones who are going to get the phone calls when the website says we can't answer that public question. I will also say, when Mr. Pink makes a comment that we can't ask questions, that means us too, and council asking many of those questions. We regularly, and I know there are emails on weekends that go to staff, because that's when we as a councillor want to get there and work. And I've said this before, I said it over the Christmas holidays, we need to make sure we try to give our staff, if they do have 5 minutes of their own time, or especially on a weekends, to try and coordinate our efforts during the week as needed and specific. But every time we throw a special meeting together, the clerk's department is running around, setting out Zoom links. They have to record minutes of those meetings. It's not as easy. Zoom has created its own world problems, especially within governance models and council. So my hat is off, and my thanks to the clerk's department here in the room today, and every department within the Township of Muskoka Lakes. Mr. Pink has highlighted the specific one that we're going to change the service level right now until further notice. It's not going to be 90 days. It's not going to be 180 days. I literally think we're going to certainly finish through the year 2021 and maybe the year 2022, depending what happens with our official plan with crazy increased workloads. So I'll leave it at that. Mr. Hammond, wants to just make one final comment, and I do agree that maybe there's some interesting communication that we can offer through our communications team. Derek.
Thanks, Your Worship. And I'd echo your comments that, every department is experiencing increased workload and the cumbersomeness of Zoom. Every time we have a special meeting, that's more minutes, agendas that our clerk's team has to pull together. I do want to address Councillor Zavet's comments about communication. I heard you, and I heard Councillor Kelly along with Councillor Mazan's offer of help through the communications team, and I think that staff, excellent idea. We'll definitely follow up on that. I think the measures that Mr. Pink has outlined today will hopefully buy some time for the planning team to get more comfortable in their roles, allow them to prioritize their workload, along with look at re-engineering processes and making sure that we can do things more efficiently. That's certainly something that, we've heard from Mr. Pink in the past that he's very interested in seeing happen. I know that Mr. Sharp is also interested in that, and as am I. As you all know, continuous improvement is something that the entire strategic leadership team is striving towards, which is why we're looking at things like an IT review, which is why we're looking at things like a recreation, parks, trails master plan, master fire plan, all of those things about looking at how we can do our business better. But the one thing that I think that we all need to be cognizant of is as we move forward and we're looking at developing new policy, and I think we all know that it's primarily in the planning area. The more complex we make the policy, the more administrative requirements and burdens we create, which staff have to figure out process for, which adds more to their workload. So I think we just need to be sensitive when we're discussing planning policies, and by no means am I trying to indicate that I don't think that they're important in terms of protecting what we're all here for as it relates to the township, but I just think we need to be sensitive to that as well. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate those words. And it's certainly very different times as we manage our way through workloads, stress loads. And that's something else that mental health, I look at everyone around this room, or every one of our families, our own personal as we look inward. When you are locked in a room and locked in a house, it's difficult as we try to express ourselves. And it's frustrating. So I know people are here to always talk in through that, and we are going to also need to listen to the public and try and answer their questions, but we can't answer them all. And I think that's something that we need to realize. So I'll leave it at that. I don't believe we have any other new business, Madam Clerk, today. We're going to have another full day tomorrow, I know, with our planning committee. But a couple of final resolutions moved by Councillor Mazan, seconded by Councillor Nishikawa. Be it resolved by Bylaw 2021-59 to confirm the proceedings of council be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. All those in favor? That is carried. One final one, thank you. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor Zavitz for 52. Be it resolved, council adjourn at 4:52 p.m. and the next regular meeting of council will be held on Wednesday, May 12th, 2021 at 1 p.m. electronically from the council chambers, municipal offices, Port Carling, Ontario. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you for a great day, everybody. And call a friend, call your family, tell them you love them. Have a good night.
And thank you, David, and your staff.